Born sick and unable to awaken, Jianlu watched his family sacrifice everything just to keep him alive. His only chance was a virtual reality game where players could earn real money and even change their fate. But after logging in, he unlocked an ability no one else possessed. He could secretly read the monster's own chat. Every hidden boss, secret quest, and legendary treasure was suddenly laid out right in front of him. Can the weakest player become the strongest by stealing every opportunity before anyone else even knows it exists? In a vast, dark forest, a group of warriors encountered an elite monster, a huge poisonous spider. They were surprised to encounter a level 4 just outside the gates of the starting village. As soon as they saw the monster's HP, 700, they started running, and one of them said they were done for. This was probably the very first elite monster since the server launched. One of the team members finally charged. One of them turned to him and exclaimed, "Why the hell did this guy run in there alone? To kill an elite monster, you need a raid of at least 10 people. His comrade told him to forget about him. He was running to certain death. They would just take his equipment when he died. Lu said that this game might be just fun for them, but for him, it was the only way to survive. The huge spider raised its paw and struck. He jumped aside in time, but the monster still grazed him and left a small wound on his cheek. But that scratch was enough for the poison to penetrate his body. Now he's losing 5 points per second for 1 minute. His team members hid in the bushes to watch, and one of them asked, "Is he crazy? Is he trying to kill a level 2 elite by himself?" His friend said, "If that sword drops, he'll take it for himself." Meanwhile, MC ran around the spider from behind and used the Eye of Insight skill to deliver a piercing blow, dealing triple damage to the monster for 48 points. After that, he stuck the sword into the ground and rushed to attack. And one of the team members asked in surprise, 48 damage? The game was only launched yesterday, and someone is already giving out such numbers? But even that much damage is not enough against an elite monster. His friend asked in surprise, did he just stick something into the ground? At that moment, the spider struck. He jumped to the side and plunged a few more swords into the ground, after which he drank a potion and restored his health. As expected of an elite monster, the passive poison damage alone drains all his strength, so he can't drag it out too long. His character's name is Big Dream. He's a player without a class and is only at level 2, but he's already dishing out high damage. He landed a few hits, but when the spider attacked in response, he realized he wouldn't have time, so he had to block. He was thrown into a tree, hit and received critical damage, and another player asked, "Is he still alive? He shouldn't strain himself like that, but revive and try again." Lu thought this was a true elite monster. One more drop of damage, and he would have died. He decided that this was enough for a warm-up, pulled the chain that connected his swords, and the spider found itself trapped. As soon as MC struck the taut chain once, the spider's entire defense immediately dropped to 0, surprising everyone. Could the trap have worked? He managed to do this using just a couple of rusty swords from the starting village. The girl told them to look at the monster. It seemed paralyzed. How did this guy know its weakness? Lu then rushed forward and delivered the finishing blow, saying he would gladly take the reward for this first kill. After that, the system announced to the entire world that the Big Dream player had defeated an elite monster, a poisonous spider. All players were surprised, as this was the first kill on the entire server. After that, the gaming community was filled with discussions about Big Dream. Everyone had never seen such a nickname, and everyone was curious about what rewards he received. Since his achievement was announced to the entire server, the rewards must be very cool. Some said he was just another rich dad who just threw money into the game and bought top-end gear, while others said everything was fair in this game and there were no donations. But even in the game, you had to suffer from social inequality. After finishing playing, MC took off his helmet and cleared his throat. It turns out he was seriously ill. His name is Jiang Liu. He has only 6 months to live, and he suffers from an incurable disease, myasthenic syndrome. The doctor said he could survive another 2 years on medicines, but he lives in a poor and old neighborhood, and his family can no longer afford the treatment. When he was completely desperate, his old pen pal sent him a message that changed his entire destiny. A fox fairy sent him a game as a gift. Perhaps this is his only chance to survive. New Origin is a global VR game created based on the spiritual world that scientists discovered inside a meteorite. Immediately after its release, the game captivated the world, and it was discovered that those awakened in the game gain incredible spiritual strength and talent in real life. The strangest thing happened during the beta test. He was accidentally thrown into a chat with wild monsters. It turns out the participants in that chat weren't people at all, but monsters from the game. Completely unaware of the person in the chat, they discussed the location of their buried treasures. Observing their correspondence, he learned many secrets about the game. At first, he was skeptical, but when he decided to follow one of the clues, he was pleasantly surprised. There really was a treasure there, and not just any treasure, but the treasure of a deity. He received an amethyst sword and along with it, the unique skill Eye of Insight, which reveals monsters' weak points and allows him to deal fatal blows. Orange means double damage, red means triple. This means that, using information from the chat, he could very quickly become stronger. Soon, word of the disappearance reached them and they were furious. But MC was determined to become stronger and survive. Only then could he get his entire family out of the debt they'd gotten themselves into for his treatment. He injected himself with an ampoule in his shoulder. It would last for 3 days, so playing was his last chance. He looked resolutely at the monitor. New messages appeared in the monster chat. A little white rabbit wrote, "They won't believe it, but he heard that a bunch of cool monsters will be coming in the next update." Sandsnake agreed with him. They say that high-level Emperor-level creatures will be released soon. Some will even drop by the newbie village. The rabbit asked, "What are such great personalities doing here?" Silver Moon Wolf Cub told everyone to try to curry favor with these bosses. They have unlimited inheritance and resources at their disposal. Liu thought about all this, put on his helmet, and logged in. He had to urgently log off after picking up trophies from a rare monster. He's now level 4, and as a reward, he received elite light armor and a black iron cloak, as well as a silver ring. MC was very happy. He was given an elite set and even a silver crab item. Of course, elite monsters always drop the best equipment. Suddenly, a small spirit appeared next to him and greeted him. She's his system assistant, and she's come to congratulate him on receiving the title of Pioneer. Let him confirm the reward. The title of Pioneer gives 100 points to health and mana, as well as the passive skill Triple Ring. When attacking one target, the third hit is guaranteed to be a critical hit. Liu was very happy because it's a good skill, after all. After which, he put on his new equipment and title and wondered if it was too flashy. He asked his assistant to conceal his name and title, then thought, if he got such equipment for his first kill of an elite monster, he couldn't even imagine what drops from the boss. She said that the trophies from special monsters depend on their class. In the early stages, until players reach level 20, Dark Iron gear is considered the top tier, and the drop rate for silver is negligible. According to official information, the gear ranks from lowest to highest are normal, Dark Iron, Silver, Gold, Platinum, and Diamond. MC was puzzled, after which a group of players approached him, and one of them exclaimed that this was the same guy. Their leader, a level 6 player named Invincible Heavens, told him not to worry. If his information is correct, then after the job he will arrange for him to join the Invincible Guild. The equipment on him looks decent, and he and his brothers became curious. Maybe he should take it off and let them take a look? Liu apologized to them, saying he was in a hurry, and then 2 guys blocked his path and said their boss did him the honor of wanting to inspect his equipment. He should be more grateful. MC asked with a smirk, did they decide to kill him and rob him just because he didn't let them gawk at the equipment? Heavens laughed and said that if his guild wants something, they will get it. He will teach him one lesson. If you have the power, do what you want. If you don't have the power, tuck your tail between your legs and don't show yourself unnecessarily. Did he understand everything? He called out to Tree, who drew his sword, telling Liu that he was just unlucky, and then struck and quickly jumped to the side, asking the system what the pain settings were. She told him that the pain was 5% of the real one, after which he asked her to hide. Upon landing, he realized that he couldn't relax. That poisonous spider attack just triggered a myasthenia attack in him. Even in the game, he has to try his best to avoid taking damage. He hasn't used any stat points for 2 levels, so he'll be putting all 10 points into dexterity now. His agility increased from 20 to 30, at which point the guys pounced on him, and Bird told Tree not to ruin the equipment. MC jumped up, appeared behind Bird, and used his insight skill, telling the guy to take better care of himself. He dealt double and then triple damage to him, causing him to die immediately and his equipment to drop. Tree remained, and Liu rushed towards him. Meanwhile, their guild leader thought in surprise, is this even possible? How can someone have so much damage and speed at this early stage? Tree struck, which MC deftly dodged and jumped behind him, after which he lunged and dealt damage, but it was not enough to kill him in one blow. The guy immediately turned around and swung his sword, drawing a crescent, and Liu noted that his defense was surprisingly high. Tree let out a furious cry and rushed to attack, swinging his sword again, but MC dodged and hit him again with a skill, causing the guy to lose health. But before disappearing, he warned the boss that the guy had strange skills. And finally, it was Heaven's turn. The man brought the guy he had brought with him in front of him, and he nervously asked what he was doing. They had agreed. He told him where he was, only so that he would accept him into the guild. After that, Liu rushed to attack. The man used the guy as a shield, and MC killed him, then jumped behind Heaven's back, and he suddenly turned around and swung his axe, swearing to chop him to pieces. He struck him several times and pierced him in the chest, dealing triple critical damage, then moved behind him and pierced his body completely, saying, he was right about one thing. When you have enough strength, you really can do whatever you want. He told the men that he would remember him, and that one day he would make him suffer in his death throes. After that, he died, and MC picked up the equipment that dropped from them. A tiger skin dagger, knight armor, and boots of agility. The first 2 items were of normal quality, and the last were iron. These boots were for agility, just what he needed. After that, he decided to return to the newbie village to replenish his supplies. Upon arriving, he noticed that many new NPCs had appeared in the village. Could it really be that among them were those big shots mentioned in the chat? He decided to see if anyone else had stumbled upon the special NPC, and opened the chat. One of the players expressed his indignation. Isn't the newbie village a safe zone? He had just been killed by some NPC. Liu was surprised. This definitely shouldn't be happening. Then he noticed a girl peering into the coffee shop. She asked the man if it was tasty and pointed to a piece of cake. He told her that he made it himself from honey and wheat flour collected in the Misty Mountains. Of course it was delicious. She wanted to try it so much that she started drooling, and he waved his hand in annoyance, telling her to get out of there, not to ruin his mood during afternoon tea. The MC noted that the plot was very hackneyed. Maybe this was one of those big shots mentioned in the chat? The girl burst into tears. She wanted that cake so much, she hadn't eaten for 3 whole days. And then Liu remembered his little sister. One day they were going to the store together. His sister, Yan, kept whining about wanting a piece of cake. Her brother told her that this thing didn't even taste good. She should listen to her brother, and then they could go home. MC smiled. The plot may be banal, but it already touched the soul. He approached the man and asked how much the cake cost. He cued it. He asked if he wanted to play heroes. He would give him that chance. He gave him exactly 1 gold, 40 silver, and 99 copper coins. Liu was shocked. That was literally all he had in his wallet, down to the last coin. Does this NPC see the contents of his wallet? In the game, 1 copper coin is worth about 1 star coin in the real world. To buy meat for the family, he only needs 30 star coins, and a red potion in the game only costs 20 copper. He worked so hard to earn this money. The girl tugged at his clothes and called him brother, saying she was so hungry. He couldn't resist her tears. He bought them a cake, thinking that if activating the quest was that expensive, she really could be an important person, so he was going all in. The man thanked him for his purchase and gave him the cake, after which the girl said with a smirk, as expected of the player who drew first blood, his courage was truly on another level. Her energy overwhelmed him. She took on her true form as a girl named Lunaria, and said that the players who had passed through here before either started making excuses after hearing the price, or tried to cheat by hiding 1 copper coin to complete the quest. They even managed to speak to her in such a vulgar tone that she simply killed them. MC was shocked and thought, so she killed those players? Could an NPC really go that far? She ran her finger along his chin and said he had a kind heart, and she liked that. She took out a lyre and suggested that he leave it at that for now. He has a glorious destiny. Let him go and pass her test. After these words, she disappeared, and the players nearby asked in surprise, is this NPC that girl? How did he manage to activate the quest chain? So many people tried, and all in vain. The system informed Liu that he had received the quest, Lunaria's Test, a unique rank. He needed to hunt small sand turtles and collect 100 of their gallbladders. MC grinned nervously. He never thought he'd receive a unique quest. He decided to check his wallet, but unfortunately all his money was indeed gone, leaving him very upset. Now he has no choice but to sell the trophies from the poisonous spider, and what he got from those 3. Otherwise he won't even have enough for supplies. He went to the market, put his goods up for sale, and soon a crowd of players gathered around him. One of them asked in surprise, are these really common rank items? The stats are just high. The girl next to him agreed. Equipping such a blade is like leveling up 2 levels, and this armor with defense of 5, that's practically a free level. The guy said he'll take everything at once for 10 silver, and the player next to him told him not to greedy. Does he think this is cheap junk? He'll offer 30 silver for it. Then, a level 6 player named Immortal appeared, and declared that he'll buy it for 1 gold coin. The players were surprised. Even he was the head of the Immortal Corporation. Just think, Immortal also came to this game. They previously worked in a popular MMO. Immortal approached Liu and suggested they chat elsewhere, which he agreed to. They went to a cafe, where Immortal started asking him about all sorts of things. He asked, so he's a solo player? It's just that getting something like that alone is difficult. MC took a sip of tea silently, preferring not to answer the question. He laughed, saying he wasn't trying to pry. He might consider the gold simply a gesture of goodwill. He just thought that if possible, they could collaborate in the future. Liu became intrigued and asked if he'd ever heard of hidden class tokens. Upon reaching level 10, players choose a specialization. There are 5 standard classes: warrior, mage, priest, archer, and assassin. But in reality, the game offers incredible freedom. There are hundreds, even thousands of hidden classes. He's led to the idea that if he suddenly finds a token for changing a profession to a hidden class, he's willing to offer a very decent price for it. MC asked him why he thought he'd be able to get it, and he replied, the server has been open for less than 4 days, and if he's not mistaken, he's already wearing black iron and silver items. Since he's selling better quality items than regular ones, it means he has his own advanced strategies. He kept asking, so he's curious about these advanced strategies. He smiled and told him not to worry. He wasn't going to pry his secrets. He just reminded him of another solo player. In an old MMO, a top guild with 1,000 people made an enemy of a solo player and was completely routed. He still remembers his provocative nickname, Bloodthirsty Mad Blade. He knows that top solo players have their own fighting methods, and their own reasons for keeping to themselves. He respects every choice. But to develop and protect his organization, he needs to constantly get stronger, so he wants to work with him. He doesn't know why, but his instinct tells him he can get what he needs from him. After talking with him, Liu went into the forest, still haunted by the idea of the Immortal Corporation. Cooperation could prove profitable given the opportunity, but right now, completing this Daemoness's quest is most important. His supplies are replenished, so he's fully prepared again. He remembers a sand turtle complaining in the chat about a boulder on the coast. He opened the chat, and the turtle was asking its fellow monsters for help. There are now a pile of huge rocks on the shore, and many turtles are stuck and can't move. The spider said they have no time for that now. All they do is fight off players. The wolf cub told the turtle to deal with it herself. There was a huge influx of newcomers right now. Everyone was defending their territories. The turtle had no choice but to accept the situation and send his subordinates there. It was clear from this message how upset this monster was. On the way further, MC noticed a group of invincible players. Their leader called out to him and asked, did he just leave the village? What was his level? And why did he have a hidden name? Being a noob isn't so shameful. Judging by the road, he was also heading to the sand turtles, and they just needed a tank to absorb damage. Maybe he wants to join them? They were from the Invincible Guild. Liu waved his hand and thanked them for the offer, but he was used to working alone. Then a girl from the team asked, do you want to beat them alone? The turtles have enormous defense. Even the amethyst sword, which is currently the first in the volume, only has 10 or 15 attack. She advises him not to overdo it if he doesn't have a proper weapon. If he goes with them, they might even lend him something. MC didn't care, since he was the owner of the amethyst sword himself, and he moved on. The guy asked why she was groveling before him. He wanted to play alone to take all the rewards, and please don't let him come crawling back to them begging. Liu thought that these people were invincible again. The world really is a small place. He had already stolen the equipment of 3 people from their guild, so he needed to be more careful. He soon arrived on the west coast. The players had already cornered one turtle and were beating it, but it was quite difficult for them, since each of their blows dealt 1 point of damage. After watching them, MC thought, so even if a player's attack is lower than the monster's defense, it still deals 1 point of fixed damage? No wonder everyone was grouping together. But where was that huge rock the sand turtle was talking about in the chat? He decided to walk further along the coast, saw several turtles stuck between the rocks, and rushed to attack, silently begging for their forgiveness. Time passed, those invincible ones finally killed one turtle, and the guy exclaimed that they were just beasts. 1 kill every 20 minutes? Who else could do that? The mage said he just dealt 8 critical damage. It was simply legendary. Their leader laughed and said that this is what he called skill. He suggested they wait for the next turtle, and then his comrade called out to them and said that something was happening further along the coast. Right now, Liu was beating up a turtle. The 4 hid behind the bushes to watch him, and when they saw how much damage he was doing, their mouths opened in surprise. Realizing it was the same lone guy, they were even more surprised. And their leader said he was even thinking of tricking him into attacking for them. And the girl exclaimed that he had an amethyst sword. What a beautiful weapon it is. She wants one too. Their friend said that it deals huge damage to the turtle. It looks like they've stumbled upon a real big shot. They took a closer look and noticed that the turtles weren't moving at all. And then the girl suddenly jumped up, exclaiming that they were stuck. This stone was preventing the turtles from moving. She turned to the leader and suggested that he just attack him. This is simply a divine place for leveling up. One of them noted with puzzlement that the 4 of them might not be enough. If they make noise and attract other enemies, there will be even more problems. Why don't they call the boss? The leader laughed and noted that he was a smart guy. They will definitely be rewarded for this. Let him call the others. This place now belongs to the Guild of the Invincible. Meanwhile, MC killed the turtle and, looking at the dropped items, thought, is this the gallbladder for that sneaky girl's quest? The drop rate for this is pretty low, only 1 piece after 4 kills. But at least they drop equipment and silver, so he's not in the red. He checked the status window and thought, even though he's already level 6, fighting monsters of level 5 is still difficult. It seems the levels of players and monsters in this game are not entirely balanced. He currently has 50 health and 10 defense. Without this stone, beating the turtles would be even harder. Another turtle targeted him, but it, like all the others, got stuck between a stone, and he immediately rushed to attack. But suddenly something crashed next to him. It was a huge turtle, and he wondered where this rare monster came from. And then he remembered that message from the turtle about sending his subordinates to check everything. So these are the same subordinates who were supposed to deal with the stone? But he wasn't afraid. On the contrary, this was the perfect moment for him. If a solo player wants to be ahead of everyone else, he needs to get all the first kills of special monsters. Seeing a rare monster, the players were very surprised, and the girl exclaimed that it looked so cool, and her comrade asked in surprise, why that guy didn't run away. Was he really going to defeat it alone? At this time, Lee rushed to attack, dealt a few blows, and easily dodged the attack, thinking, fortunately, the turtle is slow, so he can use its speed to his advantage, and with his agility, he can unleash a 4-hit combo, so he has a chance to kill it. After that, he began to quickly move around the monster, dealing powerful blows, and the players were shocked by his insane technique. Who the hell is he? Even that famous solo player is about the same level. And right now he's killing a rare monster alone? That's simply unthinkable. MC said, as expected from a rare monster. What a hassle. He spent so much time messing around, and that big turtle still has 30% health left. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. A whole gang of invincibles running towards him, led by their boss, who shouted to his brothers, they will take the first kill of this rare monster and at the same time, finish off this guy. The boss pounced on MC, hit him with an axe, leaving a dent in the ground, and ordered his subordinates to send 100 people to wear down this rare monster, but let them leave the last hit for him to finish it off. The first kill will be his. He recognized Liu and said, so they meet again. He's a vile coward. He attacked him from behind when he was relaxed and brazenly took his equipment. Today he brought all the guys to get even with him. They surrounded him and MC immediately realized that things were bad. It hadn't been long and their levels were already higher than his. That's the power of team support. It won't be easy for him. The four were still hiding in the bushes and one of them asked their leader, aren't they going? Why don't they earn some points? The guy asked, are you stupid? They weren't even level 6. Going there would be like going to their deaths. The girl agreed with him. It would be bad if they died. They would lose all their equipment, not to mention their level. So they decided to quietly sit in the shadows and steal the last blow from them. Invincible Bird pounced on Liu, ordering him to return his equipment, and he quickly dodged and jumped behind him, saying that he killed him once and would kill him again. He wanted to strike, but Tree jumped in front of him and blocked the attack. The force of the blow sent Liu's sword flying backwards, and he wondered in surprise, why? Protective gear? The Invincible One pounced on him from behind and asked if he was surrendering, since he wasn't running anymore. He dealt him a critical hit, and he immediately fell to one knee, wondering why his chest suddenly tightened so much. Was it really from the axe strike? Another guy pounced on him and asked if he was surrendering without a fight. Why was he frozen? MC tried to get up, but they immediately hit him, and they asked, so he's the pioneer. He wasn't anything special. They surrounded him, and the guild leader laughed at this pathetic sight and offered him this option. Right now, he gives him all the equipment he's wearing, and then announces in the world chat that he received the title of Pioneer the moment he attacked him. Invincible heavens from behind. If he does this, then he'll let him go. Otherwise, he'll order his men to block his respawn point. They'll hunt him again and again until he drops to level 0. Liu cursed silently, unable to even breathe. He felt like he was starting to have a myasthenia attack. Heavens advised him to think carefully, but then a loud explosion rang out and he turned to check what was going on. His guild members rushed towards him in a panic, saying that the rare mob had mutated, it was too strong. They can't kill it, they must have fed it too much experience. A huge turtle ran after them, smashing everything around it, and then let out a loud roar that knocked everyone off their feet. Heavens ordered them to stay put. The monster only had 14 health left. 1 health each, and they would all attack together. They needed to kill the rare mob, and everyone would receive a dark iron item as a reward. Hearing this, they were overjoyed and rushed to attack, and when the guild leader was about to return to Liu, he disappeared somewhere. It turns out he was running towards the turtle right then. If he didn't kill it right now, all his efforts would be in vain. He needed to hold out just a little longer, just a little more time. Heavens rushed after him, shouting that the first kill of this rare monster would be his. He ordered him to get out of the way, as he was in the way, and MC responded by exclaiming that he was the one getting in his way. Heavens caught up with him, and asked how dare he go against their guild. He swung his axe, Liu parried his blow, and as they were about to deal a couple of blows to each other, a huge turtle shadow covered them, wanting to kill the two with one blow. It slammed its paw on the ground, and the guild members fearfully praised their boss, while MC used Eye of Insight, a triple hit combo, and dealt 20 damage to the monster at once. The guild members watching him were greatly surprised. So what was that shameful single point of damage they were dealing all this time? MC finally finished off the turtle, and the system made a global announcement. Congratulations to Big Dream on his first kill of a rare monster, a small sand turtle. His level was increased several times since he made his first kill of a rare monster, and as a reward, he received a vigor pill and a gold-ranked fallen dagger. After this, Liu turned to the guild members and asked where their arrogance had gone from the crowd that had attacked him. Were they ready for a complete cleanup? He invested all his stat points into agility and began the hunt. The guys became very nervous and asked him not to come closer, but MC didn't care. He dealt a fatal blow to each of them. 1 or 2 tried to escape in the confusion, but Liu noticed them and ordered them to stop. They all turned to him nervously and said that they would do it all themselves. He wouldn't even have to lift a finger. After that, they took off all their equipment and left, and when MC had collected everything, he sat down to rest and thought that he needed to quickly sell this, log out and rest. He wrote to Immortal with an offer to buy him equipment, and Immortal promised to come soon. Immediately after that, Liu heard a rumble behind him and another small sand turtle an elite monster appeared right behind him. He took his sword and stood up, noting that it was just in time. Judging by the symptoms, an attack of muscle weakness would begin in just a couple of minutes, so he needed to finish this fight quickly. He took out a recovery potion and remembered his parents' recent conversation. His mother asked his father, didn't he buy medicines for Liu for this month? The answer was no. She was indignant because it was a painkiller. Does he even realize how much he suffers when the disease worsens? He responded by exclaiming that he couldn't help but know this, but the other children needed to eat too. Because of this, Liu felt guilty that all the family money was going to him, but right now he was trying to fix it. With a furious cry, he rushed into the attack, got very close to the monster, and swung, thinking, for so many years, he had been unable to fulfill his duties and the duty of the eldest son. He dealt a few blows and remembered how he and his sister used to go for a walk. He showed her the metropolis on the other side of the river, and she asked what kind of place it was. He told her it was a new district where rich people lived. She said that then she also wanted to become rich, and he promised her he would do everything to ensure that she lived there. Now, blocking the monster's attack, he thought that he had finally found something he could do even with this frail body. He had a chance to change the life of his family, and he wouldn't let go of this advantage he'd worked so hard to build here. He delivered the finishing blow, and the system congratulated him on killing a server-wide elite monster. The players were surprised. Now they all wanted to get to know him better. After killing the monster, he dropped rare items. As soon as he collected them, he felt terribly weak, and the system warned him about a forced logout. He was outside the safe zone, and to avoid bypassing the death penalty when logging out, his character would remain in place, so he needed to consider the risks. Right then, MC threw off his helmet, lay on the floor, and winced in pain, wondering if he could last another 6 months. At that moment, his mother returned home. She called out to him with a smile and said they were having mutant meat for dinner tonight. How was he feeling? Hearing no answer, she called out to him again, worried, and then Liu left the room and lied that he was feeling much better today and would help her. Once the food was ready, they all gathered at the table, and his mother said that their father had been paid his salary today and had bought his favorite meat, so he should eat more. MC put some meat on his little brother's plate, and he smiled and told him to eat it himself. Liu said that he was now a level 2 awakened and mutant meat would help him develop, so he should eat more. Besides, he didn't really like meat. Their father said that since his older brother was giving him meat, he should eat it. He was now at a crucial stage of training. Yu was very happy and thanked his brother. He would work as hard as he could to reach level 3, and then the whole family would move to a new area. His father praised him, and MC just smiled. During the age of the Star Ocean, plants and animals transformed into ferocious beasts, launching massive attacks on human cities. Humanity's living space rapidly shrank, and social order, under the Federation's control, virtually collapsed. However, a small minority of people suddenly gained incredible physical strength. They are called Awakened. The power of Awakened is divided into levels 1 through 10, and those above level 3 master advanced combat techniques. Some even awaken special, incredibly powerful abilities. The Federation saw them as a chance to restore world order. Awakened of level 3 and above began to be recruited into special administrative zones, new districts. Unlike the old districts, dilapidated, chaotic, and lawless, the new districts became bastions of civilization protected by the elite. With the best medicine, advanced technology, and a life of luxury, they became a true paradise, a place everyone aspires to live. Raising an Awakened is the only ticket to this paradise for residents of the old districts. According to federal law, if at least one level 3 Awakened appears in a family, the entire family is entitled to move in. He told his parents that he was full and tired and went into the room with the thought, but training an Awakened to level 3 requires colossal resources. In other words, money. While he had time, he must get the most out of the game. Even if he didn't find a way to save his own life in the game, he was obliged to leave his family with the means to survive. He logged into the game and thought, it's a pity that he had to quit so abruptly. The items that dropped had probably already been picked up. But when he logged into the game, to his surprise, he discovered that all the items were intact. It turned out that Immortal had been protecting him all this time. A large group of players gathered around them. He told them to try to pick up the items if they weren't afraid of losing their lives, and they decided to leave, since they understood that it was better not to mess with him. Liu called out to him with a smile, and he said that he had been hiding his name and level all this time. He had always wondered why. He never expected to be the same big dream who kills rare monsters. Although quitting the game in such a place wasn't the smartest decision, MC thanked him for his help. Something just suddenly happened in real life. This equipment dropped from members of the Invincible Guild who were trying to corner him. He called him over to ask if he wanted to buy it all. He could set the price himself. The guy smiled and asked, and he killed them all by himself? It seems he doesn't even know the limits of his power. Liu laughed awkwardly, and Immortal declared that he would take everything. His team is just developing, and this newbie equipment is vital for their strengthening right now. This entire set is worth at least 5 gold coins, but his company doesn't have that much money right now. Would 50,000 star coins be okay with him? If he agrees, let him give him the account number. and he will transfer the money to him by evening. MC looked slightly nervous and agreed, keeping a straight face while secretly ecstatic. 50,000 star coins was a lot. His parents couldn't earn that much in a year. He could buy medicine with that money, and his brother and sister could eat mutant meat every day. Afterwards, Immortal took his items and offered him to join their Immortal group. He could provide him with better benefits and compensation. Liu thought about it sincerely. Knowing Immortal's personality, he was sure the reward would be worthy, but he still declined, as he was used to playing alone. Joining a clan meant he would be tied to a team and would miss out on many opportunities. Besides, he couldn't guarantee he'd always be a leader. He felt much more free on his own. Immortal scratched his head with an awkward smile and said he thought he'd refuse, but the company management insisted he ask him about it. He should definitely call him again if there was anything to sell. They said goodbye, and MC decided to see what the elite monsters had dropped for him. He got a tempering potion, which permanently increases dexterity by 10 and maximum health by 50. He also received a gold-ranked Fallen Dagger, but it requires level 10 to equip. An elite silver-ranked necklace, which grants the Blink bonus skill, can only be equipped from level 8. And then came the rest of the equipment: elite armor, bracers, and boots, all dark iron rank. Liu was very happy with this haul. He was lucky again. He equipped the new equipment. Since he had collected the equipment set, the bonus was activated, giving him a stat boost. He also gained the Blink skill, which teleports him forward a short distance. It costs 50 mana and has a 2-minute cooldown. MC asked the system if he looked too flashy. Since he didn't want to be targeted again, he asked the system assistant to hide his equipment's appearance so it would show up as a basic beginner set, and she helped him with that. After that, he took out the Fallen Dagger and asked why he couldn't see the weapon's stats. Was there some kind of password to unlock it? He swung the dagger several times, trying to unlock it with various phrases, but nothing worked. So he asked if there really wasn't a password. What should he do then? Should he just throw it? He threw the weapon, and it landed in Lunaria's hand, and she remarked that it was quite an interesting item. The stats are average, but the bonus skill is quite interesting. He called her a demoness in a disgruntled tone and told her to give it back to him, and she glared at him and asked what he called her just now. He got nervous and immediately corrected himself, calling her by her name, and she asked, was it he who killed that rare mob and the elite? What about her trial? He handed her the bag and said that he did everything. The quest items are right here. Thank goodness, the rare mob's tornado hit those turtles nearby, and they dropped enough gallbladders. He was very lucky. He turned in the quest, she praised him for a good job, and immediately gave them a reward. His level immediately increased to 10, after which she tossed a dagger into his hands and said that she identified it for him. Now he could finally see the stats of it. This dagger has a 10% chance of inflicting 10 times the damage on a target, which surprised him greatly, because that was a lot. And Lunaria said, the final characteristics of unidentified equipment depend largely on the skill of the appraiser. Let him consider himself lucky that she took the trouble to identify it. Lu's eyes sparkled with delight, and she told him to go to the Bat Cave to pass the test, and she would keep the appraisal fee for herself. After that, she disappeared, and he waved goodbye, thanking her for her help, but only then did he realize what she had just said about the fee. He checked his wallet. It was completely empty, which made him almost burst into tears and shouted that she was definitely a demoness. She took all the money he had just earned for herself. After that, he went to the location of the second test, hoping that this demoness had prepared a better reward for him. He vaguely remembers a certain monster writing something in the chat. He decided to check it out, and it turns out there's a hidden class token hidden in the Bat Cave. He touched his chin in confusion and wondered why she couldn't have been more precise. Now he even felt a little awkward asking for an explanation. He turned to the system assistant and asked if she had detailed information about the Batcave. Of course she did. She was essentially the system. She explained everything in detail. The Batcave is the only entrance to the closed region of the Misty Mountains, currently a high difficulty map. Rumor has it that monsters in this cave have a chance to drop tokens of the 5 main classes. MC was puzzled. He had already reached level 10 and could change his profession, but if possible, he wanted to find a more powerful hidden class. He asked if there was information about hidden class tokens inside the cave. She apologized to him, but there was very little information about hidden classes in the early stages of the game, and she couldn't help him. He noted that this was to be expected. Nothing had even been mentioned in chat. It seemed he would have to act at his own risk, and yet, even a ghost of a chance at a hidden class was worth it. Forward to the Batcave. Several groups had already gathered at the entrance, recruiting people. Liu walked among them and noted that each of them was almost level 10. At that moment, a group of players emerged from the portal and angrily said that they had died again. 10 of them couldn't even take down a single vampire bat. One player suddenly put a hand on Liu's shoulder and offered him to join their group. It was too dangerous inside, These bats had skills. It would be easier with a full group. MC politely declined, then went into the cave, and behind him, surprised exclamations were heard about him going alone. As soon as he was inside, he took out the dagger and was very excited to finally try this thing out. Plus, he still had 5 unallocated stat points left, so he decided to invest them all in agility. Plus, after gaining a new level, his stats had grown much more than before. This should be enough to complete the test. At that moment, a bat pounced on him. Fortunately, he noticed it in time and dodged. This bat is not an ordinary one, but a vampire one. It inflicts a bleeding effect on impact. Liu noted that this one had no honor, since it decided to attack from behind. He rushed to attack as he was eager to try out the dagger, then struck. And when the monster attacked in response, he noticed that it was slow, as if it were giving an old woman a foot massage. He jumped up and struck again, then found himself on top of it, and pushing off the ceiling, rushed towards the bat and delivered the finishing blow. After defeating this bat, the system alerted him to the appearance of an elite monster. Several monsters were heading towards them at once, and he grinned. This is getting interesting. Although, according to the chat, elite monsters shouldn't drop hidden class tokens. He noticed a very small, cute bat behind these bloodthirsty monsters and immediately realized that this one was hiding what he was looking for. The other monsters were even a little upset that he hadn't paid attention to them. Meanwhile, a group of players was moving through the cave. Their leader said, "The key to defeating the bats is vigilance and evasion. Let them attack only lone players or those with low health. 5 of them will definitely take down one bat." A girl named Kiki pointed in surprise at the guy ahead and told the captain to look at him. She was pointing at Liu, who was currently beating up monsters. The players were quite surprised, considering he was hunting 5 monsters at once, one of them an elite, and he was wielding the #1 ranked weapon. MC meanwhile swung his dagger furiously, knocking back the annoying monster, and then finished off the second one in one blow, dealing 1800 damage. Afterwards, a worldwide announcement appeared. Congratulations to player Big Dream for the world's first kill of an elite vampire bat. The players were shocked. They had never seen 1800 damage dealt at once. It turned out it was the weapon's ability to increase critical damage tenfold. Liu was practicing when he saw a monster from the side and abruptly fled the spot. The girls around him started cheering him on, shouting that he was handsome and asking him to be their friend. Someone had a great body, and they also shouted about it. He was a big dream, and they loved him. He was a real professional. Liu breathed a sigh of relief that the monster had managed to fly away, and, stopping, asked them not to block his way, as he was busy. The people around him were shouting at him to at least let them get closer, when suddenly Liu fled the spot, and they shouted, "Where did he go?" The guys decided it was all because of the girl. She had scared him, and he left. Liu, hiding behind a rock, thought that he had finally broken away from the crowd, and now he could see what good the elite monster had dropped. The system reported that it was an archer class change token, the effect of which allows you to change your class to an archer. It was a regular token, as he thought. The hidden class needed to be looked for elsewhere. At that moment, a system appeared in front of him, and he was surprised by it. He then plugged the earpiece into his ear and greeted the immortal. He wanted him to lead his group through the Bat Cave. The immortal replied yes, 30,000 star coins for each person he led, but all the class tokens in the cave would go to them. What would he say about that? Liu scratched his head and replied that this cave wasn't really worth 30,000. He was offering 20,000 star coins per person, and they would take all the standard tokens of the 5 classes, but he would keep any hidden class. The immortal replied, "I'm an expert, frankly, and he's also here for the hidden classes. If 2 come up at once, he'll keep 1. Liu was surprised by this and replied, "Okay." They agreed. The immortal replied that they would be there soon. "See you later." Liu realized that this guy was very fast and would take advantage of the chance to make some money. It wouldn't hurt. In the real world, the incomparable boss's office was in chaos, because he was shouting that this bastard was a big dream. Bird replied that it was just the first kill. Elites in the Bat Cave, their company has strong support and will easily make up for it, so they shouldn't worry for now. Heavens replied, how could he not be worried? Management is already demanding an accountability for the fact that their group was completely divided last time, and now they want to demote him because of a big dream? What did the bloodthirsty Mad Blade say? Bird replied that the bloodthirsty Mad Blade is ready to join the Vertical Alliance and agrees to lead them through the cave, but he requires 1 million coins to join and 50,000 for each person he leads. Heavens replied that he's no fool. He has a big name in other companies, and he wonders how strong he is at New Origin Point. However, if he has skills, money is not a problem, and he is also ready to help them get rid of one big dream. He told him not to worry, because he already asked. He himself has a grudge against him for someone else leading so many first kills. He said he was ready to have a one-on-one duel live to show who was boss. Just now, the bloodthirsty Mad Blade killed the little white fox boss. The system announced a worldwide announcement, and everyone congratulated the player, bloodthirsty Mad Blade, on his first kill of the little white fox boss. This was his first boss kill in the game, so he definitely had the skill. Heavens replied that this was excellent, and he would make Big Dream return everything he stole from him, with interest. Inside the Bat Cave, the guys continued to move forward. One of the guys asked, "What does Big Dream look like?" The immortal replied that it was a quiet guy who hid his name and level and always walked alone. It was him. When they got closer to Liu, the immortal asked, "Isn't that him standing over there?" Liu waved and called him immortal brother. He apologized for keeping him waiting, and when the immortal cloth approached him, she asked, "Is he Big Dream?" She was sure that she would see a huge warrior in cool clothes. Why was he so puny? He couldn't help it, since the game automatically generates avatars based on real bodies. One of their allies asked, "Is that him? But he looks like a typical weakling. Could he really take on the three of them? Vampire mice have sky-high stats." Liu responded with silence, after which the immortal slapped his subordinate on the back of the head and apologized to Liu, saying that his men weren't very polite but they weren't evil. The guy asked again. Even with 5% pain simulation, it still hurt like hell. Liu noticed the cloth, which said the boss was being too rough, when suddenly Liu abruptly grabbed her by the hair and yelled for everyone to get down. A multitude of bats descended on them, and he warned them to be careful, as these creatures love to attack from behind. They should leave these three on him. At that moment, the immortal extended his hand and shouted that they had come to his aid, but Liu, with one swing, destroyed several bats at once with incredible ease, leaving everything around him covered in blood. He jumped from one bat to another, destroying them with ease, and after a while, he declared that everything was ready. When the bats were completely destroyed and dissolved into pixels, the guy shouted, "Boss, did that just cause 2,900 damage? Did he slap a vampire bat with one blow?" The immortal replied that he didn't understand anything himself. They hadn't seen each other for only a couple of days, and he had already become so strong. Cloth wondered why he was so beautiful, and Liu said he was lucky. He had gotten an archer's token and could keep it. Let him take the junk, and they would move on. The immortal grabbed it in his hands and, delighted, said that the dagger of the fallen, which ranks first in the weapon rankings, is this what he holds in his hands, right? The guys were surprised, as he dealt so much damage and his equipment looked ordinary. How old was he? Liu became embarrassed and wondered if that was why he wanted to play alone. When they entered the depths of the cave, they paused, confused. There were several different entrances, and the immortal asked if he knew where Protagonist replied that he was new here, but it didn't matter. They would just go at random. Shenxian replied that was true and asked what difference it made if he was with them. Cloth asked why he was so arrogant. At that moment, she turned her attention upward and saw another huge number of bats. The immortal said that even if they were revived, dying from having their blood drained alive would leave them with lifelong injuries. He suggested choosing another path, but Liu asked them to wait. He had found what they needed. This is the same bat that escaped from them last time. There was no point in changing the route. After all, the larger the monster, the smarter the prey. They might even score a windfall, but if all those bats attacked at once, even with his speed, he wouldn't be able to dodge all their attacks. The immortal replied yes. If he suddenly leveled his weapon at an object upon death, there would be no retribution. Liu announced he had a plan. They should move away to avoid being accidentally hit. The bat's bleeding skill would drain 50 health per second. The immortal waved his hand and said they understood, and at that moment, Liu was surprised at how fast the bats were. He abruptly drew his swords and began fighting, attacking one after another, when suddenly another bat appeared behind him, and the guys were frightened for him upon seeing it. They shouted that he couldn't kill it with one blow, and if a fight broke out now, the nest would be disturbed. Suddenly, Liu disappeared from the place where one of the bats was trying to attack, and moved to another. The guys couldn't understand how he did it. It was a jump. Where did he get such an imbalanced skill? Liu thought the range was about 25 meters, but the cooldown seemed long. The system reported that he had an elite necklace, silver rank, with the bonus skill jump, requiring level 8. They should wait 2 minutes for the jump cooldown. At that moment, he pounced on the bat and Shenshin said that the guy wanted to lure them away and kill them one by one, so as not to attract the attention of the others. Cloth was delighted by how handsome he was, and Liu thought it would take a long time, but the method was reliable. Let the little creature wait. The system reported that he received a quest item, a vampire bat fang, 4 out of 100. The vampire bat fang was missing. The description is for a quest item. At that moment, he killed another bat, and blood flew everywhere. 2 hours later, he completed this quest and thought that, if you don't count this triviality, this was finally his last. He'd raised 2 levels here at once, pumping everything into dexterity. He also received a quest item, a vampire bat fang, 206 out of 100. Like vampire bats, a description of the quest item. The trials of the demoness were also completed, and now it was his turn. He turned around and said the guys were too relaxed. This wasn't a peace zone. Shenshin asked again, "Master, is it really over?" He'd just gone for a bite to eat. Cloth asked again, "Did she fall asleep?" Liu reported that there was only one left, but suddenly the immortal shouted that, while he was offline, the master single-handedly dealt with 200 vampire bats and obtained over 30 class tokens. This was such a rare opportunity to learn. How could he be so lazy and quit the game? Shenxian shouted, "Master, he really can be trusted. Why are they waiting?" He suggests squashing the last creature and getting it over with. Liu replied that he was waiting for the flicker cooldown to wear off. This creature was fast and he didn't want that word to slip through his fingers. Shenxian asked again, "He's too cautious. Let him leave this little one to him. He can't just stand by and reap the benefits." Liu asked him to wait. Suddenly, Shenshin pounced on the bat and shouted, little bat, to let it know its immortal master. As he pounced on the bat, the creature's eyes glowed bright red, and a strong wind emerged. Shenxian screamed in fear and fell to the ground, hitting his back. The immortal didn't understand what was happening. What had happened? Liu was surprised and cursed, realizing it was a mutated monster. The bat began to transform into a huge creature, and the guys were stunned, frightened. Shenxian asked, "Is it still a bat?" The cloth screamed. 4,000 health? They must be joking. The immortal pointed his sword and told them to take them and leave. This creature's stats were too terrifying. Shenxian replied that he shouldn't underestimate them. They finally had a chance to stretch their muscles. How could they run away now? The cloth replied yes. In the worst case, they would simply be reborn and start all over again. But the immortal exclaimed, "No." This time, they trusted the master to take the team away, and everyone must obey his instructions. Let him convince them of that. Liu turned and said, "Immortal, what if he says this creature might drop a hidden class item?" The immortal asked, "Really?" It was a guess, but the probability was high, and it was worth fighting for. He shouted, "Okay, he's listening. How would they fight?" Liu said they should spread out and prepare a healing potion to maintain him. He replied that he understood everything. Everyone should prepare, drink the red potion, and disperse. When Liu pounced on the bat, he found himself right next to the creature and began to dodge the attacks. He looked questioningly at the creature's face and continued to fight, when suddenly he realized he'd caught it. The monster stuck out its tongue, and Liu paused, his eye of insight failing to see its weakness. Shenxian couldn't understand why the master's damage had dropped so sharply. The immortal shouted that he didn't know. "Master, if even he couldn't handle this, then none of them were a match for him." Beads of sweat poured down his face in fear, but Liu continued to struggle, thinking that this was impossible. He didn't see the slightest hint of vulnerability. A bright flash erupted between them, and the monster struck Liu, who flew to the side and hit the wall hard. The others were frightened for him and shouted, "Master!" They were left alone with the monster, and Liu, trying to get up, exclaimed. The system reported that he had entered a bleeding state, losing 50 health every second for 10 seconds. The monster began to roar loudly and pounced on him again. Shenxian came to his aid and shouted, "Don't even think about approaching the master." The cloth screamed for this bug-eyed creature to die right now. Meanwhile, Liu was drinking a red potion and increasing his stats. The immortal asked, "Master, is he alright?" He apologized and said he didn't expect it to be so difficult. Just wait a second. He'd take care of everything right away. At that moment, the immortal placed a hand on his shoulder and said everything was fine. They'd hold out for a while. He handed him a few more purple potions, and Liu asked if the immortal was really going to call for backup. They didn't have time. By the time this arrived, it would be the end for them. He asked for a little more time, and the immortal replied, "No problem, master." He'd hold it off for now, but ultimately, all hope would rest with him. They couldn't defeat this monster without him. At that moment, Liu recalled memories from his past, when he'd carried buckets of water on his own. For as long as he could remember, he'd always been the one to take care of. He understood the condescension of those around him, but it was just a constant reminder that he was weak. The guys shouted that he was incredibly reliable and incredible, but they felt they considered him strong, and that this was truly wonderful, and he couldn't disgrace the title of master. The cloth screamed, "Look here, ugly creatures," but suddenly it missed, and Shenxian said to aim before shooting and not waste arrows. The immortal asked, "Master, have you come up with a strategy?" He replied that he had a plan, but he needed their help. The immortal said that if there was a way, that was good. Let him tell them what to do. Liu said that in the intervals between attacks, they should buy him at least a few seconds, but this creature's damage was prohibitively high, so it was better to choose from a distance to constantly contain it. Can they handle it? The immortal realized what it was, and at that moment, he became frightened. The immortal cloth jumped aside and screamed that it was about to die, and Shenxian asked to leave it to him. A token appeared in his hands, and he said that everything would be fine if he changed his archer class, right? Luckily, the immortal cloth had a weapon he could use. At that moment, the immortal shouted, "Immortal cloth," saying, "A player can only use a class token once." He was always looking for a hidden class token. Once he chose the apprentice class, there was no turning back, so he offered to do it for him. Shenxian yelled at the boss to stop chattering. He had to confirm the use. The immortal continued yelling at him to stop, give him a weapon, and not aim randomly, but leave him the arrows. Shenxian replied that he was now counting on him. The system reported that he had changed his archer class to apprentice. He was learning the skill single shot. Single shot is a single target attack that deals 80 or 110 damage on impact. He was saying, "So that's what archer class it is? Looks pretty good." The monster pounced on him with incredible speed, and Shenxian said, "Get that arrow." When he threw the arrow, it shone with a bright light, and he thought he'd hit it, then said he'd dealt more damage than the master, and laughed. The monster began to roar loudly, and Shenxian realized he needed to save himself and asked the master for help. Liu appeared from behind the monster and asked, "Where's that bat looking?" It turned to him in fear, and the protagonist screamed that it was just as he thought, the weak spot in the eye, which was so hard to find. As he rushed to attack the bat, Shenxian shouted, "Master, this is pure cheating. He even changed his class." but his damage output still doesn't hold a candle to him. Shenxian shouted at him to aim for the eyes, and he shouted for him to catch another arrow. At that moment, Shenxian swung the arrow and threw it right at the center of the bat, shouting, "On target again? He's a genius." The rest of the guys stood nearby and watched. The immortal cloth asked, "Isn't she imagining things? How did he work so flawlessly with the master?" The two of them were trying to destroy the monster, and Liu was getting a lot of points. Shenxian yelled, "Master, he's stealing all the attention," offering to give this genius student another chance. Liu turned around with a smile on his face and shouted, "Okay, great archer, all hope lies with him." Shenxian laughed and shouted at the monster to hold on. He fired an arrow straight at the creature's forehead, and the immortal cloth was surprised that the master was an archer. His damage was meager. The immortal confirmed that compared to the master, he was nothing. Shenxian became angry and shouted for him to shut up, as he was not allowed to speak. Liu swung his sword at the bat and shouted, "Rest in peace." When he struck the creature in the head, it screamed loudly in pain and terror and dissolved into pixels a moment later. Liu landed lightly and considered his bad luck. The tenfold damage multiplier on his dagger attacks hadn't worked. The immortal cloth asked, "Boss, where did he dig up this master, and where did he get such wild power?" The immortal replied, "Yes, he did. He stumbled upon the shop while looking for equipment and didn't expect it to be so powerful." Liu thought it was incredible, and he dropped 2 orbs of light at once. The first was a revealed class token, the effect of which allows him to change his specialization to the hidden Wind Herald class. Also a hidden Druid class token, the effect of which allows him to change his specialization to a hidden class. The immortal cloth asked, "Are these hidden class tokens?" Liu replied yes, they were extremely lucky, and there were 2 of them. She asked, stunned, 2? Now they were definitely rich. Liu explained that, as they had agreed, they would take one for themselves and the other would be theirs. The immortal replied that he had never imagined it would be so dangerous. These 2 tokens were a must. Liu replied that this time the spoils weren't his alone, but Shenxian had personally helped him too. But an agreement was an agreement, and this was their rightful reward. Shenxian exclaimed, "Yes, boss. He really had worked his ass off this time, so everything should work out well." Suddenly, someone plunged a huge sword into his back, and he was terrified, crying out in pain and horror. Liu turned around in fear, as did the immortal and the immortal cloth, who were dumbfounded and began screaming. It was Heavens who had done this, declaring that everything had to be so that all the spoils would go to him. Shenxian began to fall and dissolve into pixels, and Heavens declared that the immortal faction had completely collapsed, because one of their leaders was wearing such trashy equipment. It was pathetic. The immortal exclaimed that the boss was invincible, and that their immortals and his invincible guild had a non-aggression pact, so how dare he do such a thing? Liu tried to calm him down, but Heavens said they were rivals by nature, pickpockets for the equipment their men had dropped on the coast. They had taken items and groups from the beach, and now he could even enter trades with their guild's sworn enemy. They asked for tokens quickly, and the entire invasion. Then perhaps he would allow him to die quickly and painlessly. The entire group of men looked at their rivals with smirks, and the immortal shouted, "The boss is invincible." He was so angry he couldn't form words, and Liu told him to back off. They were just a bunch of losers. He should take the immortal cloth and Shenxian and retreat. He'd deal with them himself. At that moment, Heavens stomped loudly on the ground and indicated he was approaching, declaring that he'd only drawn first blood 4 times, and his arrogance had skyrocketed. So, he'd risk going against him? The immortal remembered him and shouted, "It's him!" One of the guys replied, "Big dream." The forum is full of people arguing about who's stronger, but in his opinion, he's not even worthy of being mentioned in the same sentence. Is this a bloodthirsty, insane blade from the Invincibles? Liu wondered if this guy had a hidden class, and 2 girls who launched a quadcopter with cameras decided to settle this ridiculous debate live on air. Everyone started discussing breaking news. The fight between the insane prisoner and the big dream begins in a minute. There's a link to the stream. Liu agreed, but the immortal tried to stop him. He said the immortal blade was obsessed with power. No matter what he played, he cared only about one thing, surviving the maximum possible critical damage. Until today, no one had been able to defeat him in a duel. He had already switched to a hidden class, most likely one focused on crits. Why didn't he use the tokens they had just dropped first? He should switch classes, and his chances would significantly improve. The immortal fabric screamed, "Yes, brother master, he must win." Liu considered it. So, a hidden class, let immortals support him while he has these tokens, and he would choose one when they got out of here. He shouldn't worry. If it's a crit, he's not guaranteed to lose. Now is not the time to choose, and rushing in such a matter is disrespectful to the outcome. People were commenting on how the big dream was so cool, a pioneer against the strongest solo player. That would be a fight. Madblade asked if he needed time to prepare. He could heal his pathetic health. Once they began, he wouldn't accept any excuses or pleas for mercy. Liu replied that he wasn't worth it because he was already prepared, and Blade screamed at him to die if he did. He swung his sword and shouted a vortex-cutting spell. When Liu saw this, he realized he was acting incredibly fast, and the immortal fabric screamed at him to watch out, while Immortal didn't have time to say anything at all. At that moment, a bright flash of light occurred, and Liu jumped to the side, then approached Blade and ended up behind him. He realized he was caught. but Blade asked if he even had the jump. Those were good reflexes, but at that moment, Liu struck him in the head from behind, and his blood spilled. Suddenly, his sword rose up, and Liu realized he had blocked the third blow. He needed a different approach. He would take advantage of his agility and try to defeat him that way. His agility was 89, and people continued to comment on everything that was happening and express their thoughts. Liu was oblivious, thinking that this guy was incredibly strong and didn't have a single wasted move. He was reading his triple combo, and his defense was calibrated down to the millimeter. And even though he'd already poured 500 points of damage into it, he hadn't even touched a potion. Blade couldn't understand how many health levels he had. Heavens, watching from the sidelines, thought it was a dream come true. His movement and attack speed were top-notch, but he'd already figured out all his patterns. As long as he blocked his third strike, his damage wasn't much of a threat. Blade fought his opponent with a smile on his face, while Heavens asked for people to station at the spawn point in front of the Batcave. As soon as he respawned, they should circle around him. They should camp him until he dropped to level 0. Once they were dealt with, he would lure Mad Blade, this tough loner, into their vertical alliance, and the guild's fame would skyrocket, finally earning him that promotion. Liu mused that even with his maximum attack speed, he couldn't penetrate his armor. Blade muttered, "A big dream." He acknowledges Astra's findings, but when he sees through his trajectory, he's nothing to him. Immortal Fabric shouted at its boss to watch him heal. Immortal replied that it must be a hidden class skill. It halts a massive health drain immediately after taking damage. This would be a tough fight for the master. Blade swung his blade at him and shouted that trash is trash. He'd show him what true critical damage is. At that moment, intense tension appeared in his eyes. He screamed loudly and thrust his sword straight into the ground. The impact created bright sparks, and Liu realized his charging looked strange and he should interrupt it. He rushed into battle, found himself behind his opponent, and wondered how much health this freak had. Blade was screaming at him to die. "You jerk." And Liu exclaimed that things were bad, then used Hurricane Flurry. He leaped into the air and, landing nearby, realized that if not for his dodge skill, this blow would have definitely depleted his health. He exclaimed, realizing that his skill could be reused. But what about his dodge? Liu understood that he should have a couple of seconds pause before activating the skill, but at that moment, he rushed with an attack straight at his opponent, who was screaming at him to die. He used Hurricane Flurry again, and at that moment Liu was impaled, his blood spilling. He clutched his chest and stopped, deciding to drink a potion, thinking about how he only had 2 health points left. What kind of insane damage was this? Blade smiled and shouted that this was so cool, simply mind-blowing. Immortal realized that even this master couldn't do anything against the Bloodsaber. Immortal Cloth closed its eyes to block out this horror, and the rest of Team Heavens laughed at what was happening. He shouted that very soon the name of the rulers would thunder throughout the world. Blade exclaimed that his fairy tale had come to an end, and that the era of the Bloodsaber had now arrived. The guy was just unlucky enough to meet him. He would gladly take whatever he could get. Liu realized that he truly was unlucky, and swinging his sword, shouted that he'd waited so long, it was time for him to get to work. Blade exclaimed that this pathetic insect was unwilling to accept fate. His meager results were pathetic. Even if he gave him 100 more chances, what could he do to him? He was simply worthless. Liu approached him closely, then shouted that he only needed it to work once. Blade clenched his teeth, then was surprised to see the sword right next to his face. A moment later, he began to dissolve into pixels, screaming one last time to stop, because it was simply impossible. He couldn't lose. All the guys around him opened their mouths in shock, not understanding what the hell was going on here. What kind of 4-digit damage was this? Had he really won? The commentators were discussing how he was 100% cheating. It was the dagger of the fallen in his hands. #1 in the rankings. Heavens shouted that Bloody Saber was considered one of the strongest solo players, and even he couldn't defeat him. In the end, they just helped this Liu gain fame. He turned to his female subordinates and shouted, "Why are they frozen? They should turn off the stream right now." Liu crouched down and asked, did he get 2 items? The first item was a hidden class change token. Edgebreaker, hidden. This effect allows you to change your class to hidden Edgebreaker. A treasure map of the White Fox clan and a unique effect, unknown. He was surprised. Hidden tokens. A treasure map. Could this really be a reward for defeating the White Fox chieftain? How lucky he was. At that moment, Heavens approached him from behind and shouted, "Put your things down." He is dying now and they will all attack together. The whole group of guys abandoned their combined efforts to destroy Liu. Immortal shouted at him to shut up, and at that moment he took damage. Heavens didn't understand. Immortal clan, how dare they? Immortal asked again. How did he say the first strike has an advantage, right? At that moment, a trophy appeared on the ground in the middle, and Liu asked, 4 against 3, the advantage is theirs. So what? Are they going to risk it? Bird shouted, "Guys, it's time to test their spirit and their clan's strength. They must hold their ground." The girl exclaimed, "They can't hold out. 3,000 damage, that's insane. They must run away from here." The other one exclaimed that she also did not intend to disappear here and asked for his forgiveness. Tree got angry and started shouting at them to stop, after which they both ran after the girls, asking them to wait for them. Liu chuckled at what was happening, and the Immortal Cloth asked, "What about their spirit?" She never saw it. Immortal also laughed and said, "Brother expert, here's the medal he saved for you. He's returning it to its rightful owner. Lu rejoiced and said that this metal and equipment that had just fallen from the bloody blade of the ruler of the world belonged to him. He can take this metal as a thank you for protecting him on the beach. Lu replied that he would only take this metal. Judging by the name, it was an assassin class with high attack speed, perfect for him. Immortal exclaimed, "Can he hug him?" Liu replied that he shouldn't. And Immortal Cloth became embarrassed and asked, "Expert, is he really unwilling to join the Immortal Clan? Their guild had such a great atmosphere, and he would definitely like it there and wouldn't be bored." Liu thanked her for the invitation and said that if he decided to join any clan, they would be the first ones to approach. Immortal Cloth became embarrassed and asked when they had gotten into formalities. Immortal said that he had just transferred 100,000 star coins to him. He should check the balance as soon as he had time. Liu, stunned, asked, 100,000? They had agreed on 20,000 per person, and besides, Shenxian wasn't here. Immortal told him to listen to him first. In this Batcave, their Immortal Clan had obtained dozens of class medals, as well as 2 crucial hidden class medals. Thanks to this, their Immortal Clan now has every chance of breaking into the top guilds, and all thanks to his leadership. Besides, he just publicly defeated Mad Blade, the strongest solo player, and now he is officially recognized as the strongest. Their company's management had also instructed him to do everything possible to establish friendly relations with him, so he should take it calmly. They were more worried about paying too little. Liu was delighted and thanked them. Now he could indulge in monster meat every day. The guys waved and said that Shenxian had already respawned outside, and they would go meet him. Liu waved his hand and replied, "Okay, people say the exit leads to a new location, and he wants to look, so this is where their paths diverge." Immortal Cloth asked the boss if they should try to lure the expert into their clan again. Immortal, realizing it, asked, "So what then? She could take advantage of the situation and hang around her beloved friend every day, right?" Immortal Cloth blushed and covered her ears, while Immortal reflected on how Lu's name would become a nightmare for all players in the future. How fortunate that he was their friend, not their enemy. Lu emerged into the icy cave and wondered what this branch hid. If he followed this path, would it lead to the exit? And why were there no players here? Was it his imagination, or was it getting colder? He began to exhale steam from the icy air and realized the new source was frighteningly realistic. Could this bone-chilling cold really be just a game effect? At that moment, his feet suddenly began to freeze, and he began to scream. What the hell? Are his feet frozen? He couldn't move, and stared into the distance when he suddenly heard a loud scream from a monster. It was a level 25 mutant ice demon. A huge, powerful creature began to approach him, and Lu screamed in fear. Where did a level 25 monster come from? What kind of insane stats were these? Suddenly, a bright flash of light erupted from the attack. Lu tried to dodge and realized that this monster was even crazier than before. The monster roared loudly and showed its fangs, then flew up and pounced on Lu. It screamed that the ice was too high and that he wouldn't be able to get out of here anyway. Damn it, was he really going to die here? He'd have to change classes now. And that was better than dying and losing his equipment. If he lost his dagger, he'd definitely go crazy. The system asked, "Are you sure you want to change classes to a wind spellcaster?" He was about to confirm this when he suddenly heard screams and saw the monster begin to glow. He was surprised that the monster was paralyzed and didn't understand who had done it. Who was it that continued to chant the spell, calling lightning the wrath of thunder? Let it incinerate the enemies before it. At this point, the monster was already in terrible condition, and Liu was surprised. 5-digit damage with just one sword strike? A girl appeared in front of him and asked if he was okay. It turned out to be Lady Lunaria, and she waved her hand at him, saying that since he was okay, he should take this blow and try to survive. He asked again, "What does that mean?" She swung at him and screamed to defend himself. When her fist landed near his nose, he suddenly used his powers and managed to crawl out of the ice, shouting at his speed. Another second, and he would have been a corpse. This devil's strength was simply terrifying, and Lunaria said that his reaction speed was good, but he relied too much on skill. Everything was happening too quickly, and even his eye of insight couldn't keep up. She ended up behind him, and Liu couldn't figure out where she was. He was in danger and muttered that it didn't look very impressive. Could this class really be stronger than a wind spellcaster? Lunaria shouted that this was the temple's only legacy. Stupid boy. He should appreciate what he was given. She couldn't believe he'd managed to obtain wind spellcasters, even though it was a mere trifle for their temple. He shouted, "Mistress, let her return his wind spellcaster." Lunaria replied that he was a lucky guy. His divine connection was astounding. He asked again, "What is a divine connection anyway?" She'd already mentioned it during their last meeting. Lunaria replied that she couldn't say too much right now. Simply put, it could be considered a hidden stat of luck. This stat directly influences fate, hidden potential, and a person's life itself. However, a great gift always comes with a high price, and she senses that his reason for being in this world is very different from that of other people. Liu didn't understand what she meant and asked about it, after which Lunaria said that his real body was still on the verge of death, wasn't it? He was dumbfounded and realized she definitely wasn't a game character. How did she know that? This game seemed much more complicated than he thought. Lunaria replied that that was all. Unnecessary knowledge would bring disaster upon him personally, and that once he possessed the temple's legacy, then he would be able to figure everything out. He wondered if the temple's legacy could save his life in the real world. Although it was still unclear, he felt like he was one step closer to solving the mystery. At that moment, magical sparks appeared around his body, and the system reported that he had successfully changed his class to apprentice. He was surprised that the class change had been successful and examined his body. Nothing seemed to have changed much, so he asked, "What combat skills do they have? Is there some kind of powerful superpower, like that cool move she just showed?" Lunaria asked again. Didn't she say the students were a support class and didn't have any super moves yet? He exclaimed. Support class? Was she making fun of him? She replied that she would teach him 3 skills to start, but Liu disagreed and said he wanted 6. She started bargaining and said 4, but Liu asked for 5. She replied that then she wouldn't teach him anything at all, and he shouted that he agreed. Liu examined the system window and asked, "What are those gold prices?" She replied that they were, of course, tuition fees. Or did he think everything was free? Liu grew even more angry and started shouting, "Where did he get so much money? She fleeced him blind every day." She replied that they could then negotiate an exchange, and as a mentor, she was very understanding. A moment later, he lost the amethyst sword, which greatly surprised him, and she said that it was an interesting weapon, a divine treasure. The materials were good, and she even regretted that they had forged such a simple weapon from them. She would take it, of course. Liu screamed, his amethyst sword. A moment later, he learned new skills and realized that everything was as usual. If he caught his eye, she simply took it away. A true bandit. The system reported the new skills he had acquired, and he screamed, "Are these really his new skills?" He was greatly surprised and exclaimed, "Such incredible effects are already available at the basic level? Were the student's skills really that strong?" She replied that he now understood their full power. Well, he would train on his own from now on. Next month, she would be in the capital, and then he could ask his questions. At that moment, she vanished, and Liu scratched his head and said that he still had so many unanswered questions. Well, he would ask her the next time they met, but for now, he would deal with his own strength. Suddenly, he saw something glowing nearby and asked what it was. He realized it was the token the ice demon had dropped. It was a class change token, Hidden Ice Archer, whose effect allowed him to change his class to the Hidden Ice Archer class. At that moment, Lunaria appeared behind him, lost in thought. His divine fame was so strong that even she couldn't fully discern it, so she suggested they see if he could defy fate itself. A light became visible ahead, and Liu headed straight for it. It seemed like a dreamscape when he stepped into the clearing and saw incredibly beautiful views, flowers, and sunshine. He hadn't imagined such a beautiful place hidden beyond the Batcave. It was just like a fairy tale. At that moment, 2 girls approached him and asked how he even got to this cave. The entrance to this cave had been sealed off by the 12th squad to hunt the ice demon, and no one was supposed to leave. This girl was level 11, 12th squad fairy cake, berserker apprentice. Next to her was another girl of the same level from the 12th squad, Captain Cat, explosive shooter apprentice. She told him to get out of here quickly. If he disrupted the 12th squad operation, he would be in trouble. The protagonist thought, 12th squad? His acquaintance mentioned that her guild was financed by large corporations. It seemed they were after that mutant monster. At that moment, Cake pounced on him, screaming that they'd checked everything and that getting out alive without the ice demon was impossible. She didn't know how he'd managed to survive, but if he'd pocketed the 12th squad's loot, he'd better give it back the good way. Kitten considered it a fair cake, considered the fastest stormtrooper in the 12th squad, but this brat had blocked her blow with a regular dagger? Wait, that dagger? Was that really gold gear? The guy hiding his name and level was armed with a golden dagger. He was a master of close combat, a lone wolf who'd cleared the bat cave without a group. She shouted at the fair cake, "Don't let him get away from it. It's Liu. He's probably full of valuable loot." Liu was surprised and asked, "Do they know him?" The girl shouted, "Oh yeah. He, having defeated the Bloodblade in a duel, was now simply a walking treasure trove. If he didn't want to make enemies with the 12th squad, he should hand over his weapon and emblem immediately." Kitten told him not to even think about resisting, as they had hidden classes that favored pure attacks and 1 extra move. She could send him to the respawn point, but the guys from the 12th squad would round him up at respawn, so he'd better give it all up nicely. He laughed and asked, "Do they think a hidden class makes them special?" and decided to use him as a personal ATM. Kitten screamed, telling him that if he moved, it would be the end for him. Liu exclaimed that he was summoning the speed of the stars, drawing on the power of radiance, and that his steps would rush along the starry path. At that moment, he easily dodged the attack, and Cake screamed, "What speed?" He had changed his class to a wind spellcaster, and she should be more careful. Kitten was stunned to realize, a wind spellcaster. They say this eye increases agility by 30%, an incredible speed boost. This was the very emblem the 12th squad had been waiting for, but they were too late and he had already activated it. Kitten screamed that they couldn't hesitate and that he must use his skills and finish him off. Cake screamed, "Okay, let him experience her skill firsthand." At that moment, she swung her sword, but Liu had already run past and shouted that this was pretty good speed. His strength was fine too, okay, he'd play with her a bit. In the name of the hero, for the glory of the god of war, let this grant him strength and enemy intent. She screamed that all he had was speed, so let him get hit now. She tried to punch him, but he grabbed her arm with his own and asked with a smile, "Is that all she can do?" Cake screamed that her strength bonus was considered the best of her skills. How could he so wisely and easily intercept her attack? A wind mage shouldn't have any strength skills at all. Kitten screamed that now was not the time to be flying in the clouds. And at that moment, she tried to hit Liu, who smiled and said it was too slow. Her arrow landed on the ground, and he flew off. He was surprised by the explosion and realized he'd let his guard down. This must be her cash skill. Cake exclaimed that he'd been caught, and he cast a spell. Let the melody become the previous bonds, the chords of the chain, let it ring out. At that moment, Cake was stunned and didn't understand what was happening. She couldn't move. She screamed that he was a pervert and that he didn't dare look at her, because at that moment she jumped above him. Everything under her clothes was visible. He screamed that he hadn't seen anything, and she shouted that he was lying, because he had definitely been looking there. Kitten was surprised that this couldn't be true, as a wind summoner doesn't have such a skill. Liu apologized, and a moment later killed Cake, disintegrating her into pixels. He declared that only one remained and looked at Kitten with confidence. He dodged the attack, the arrows exploded, and MC nervously gritted his teeth, knowing it was very dangerous. Even if he dodged, he would still be caught in the blast. There were no allies nearby now, so she fired without any fear. He ran towards her, dodging the shots, then jumped behind her and used paralyzing motive to strike. She was struck and her muscles immediately spasmed, but it was as if she had expected it. She turned to him with a smirk and swung her leg, but he managed to jump aside in time and was surprised that she had such high defense. Then he would try to activate the tenfold damage from the fallen dagger. Kitten continued shooting at him while he dodged and exclaimed that he was too slow. Let him run faster. Liu approached her again, used the skill, and then began to quickly move around her, simultaneously striking her. He felt nervous because the dagger's effect hadn't kicked in yet. Even with the Song of the God of War, he couldn't deal more damage to her. Something was wrong with this girl. She quickly turned around and kicked him, sending him flying. He crashed into a rock, and the impact dissipated his agility and attack bonuses. Kitten said that she had to admit his class skills were quite good. With such huge stat bonuses, the mana consumption and recharge time must be colossal as well. Besides, he can't deal critical hits anymore, right? Okay, she'll show him mercy and explain. He was very surprised. She put on the armor and said it was hidden equipment that granted immunity to all critical hits, the armor of fortitude. However, it only lasts for 3 hours. If he made her use it, he really was good. She drank the potion, restored her health and strength, then took aim and said, she's going to have a blast these 3 hours. After all, for every point of damage dealt, she increases her skill mastery. She's incredibly honored that the great big dream himself will be her training target. And most importantly, watching him thrash around in panic is an indescribable pleasure. He grinned said, then he should thank her. He thought he wouldn't have the chance to test his latest skill again. And thanks to her, he's also quite pleased. It's just great that she turned out to be so resilient. Her gaze filled with bewilderment, and he cast a spell, receiving the effects of Starry Breath and Song of the War God. Now his agility and attack are increased by 50%. The effect lasts 100 seconds. She became worried and exclaimed, skills with such insane stat bonuses. He activated them again. But he hadn't even drunk a mana potion. What kind of class is that anyway? This completely ruins the game balance. But she quickly pulled herself together and wondered why she was panicking. No matter how powerful his skills were, he still couldn't penetrate the defenses of her armor of fortitude. He rushed to attack, and she smirked at how stubborn he was, and he said, summon the breath of the Thunder God. Turn the curse into song. Know the pain? Doubled. The girl was cursed by the Thunder God. Now the damage she took was increased by 100%. MC smirked and asked, she really enjoyed shooting him, right? Now it was his turn to enjoy it. She was terrified and exclaimed, what class is that anyway? And then she remembered how the man had told her that even among the hidden classes there was a hierarchy. Information had leaked through secret military channels that one support class was considered the strongest of them. Cake stretched lazily and told him not to make fun of her. What is a support class even capable of? He replied, They say its buffs are simply incredible, the stat increases are colossal, and the cooldown and mana costs are practically imperceptible. Let them remember, it is better never to be hostile to him. If they encounter him in battle, they must flee immediately. Kitten asked, is he really that strong? And what is the name of his support class? He answered her that it is the only legacy of the temple, the Bard, and now Kitten finally saw him in person. She couldn't believe that she would actually meet him. Liu smirked and told her that he was curious himself. Only now he will send her to the respawn point. He dealt her a fatal blow, and as she disappeared, she shouted that her 12th squad will not forgive him. After that, he picked up her weapon and noted that the curse of the Thunder God had saved him. The only weapons dropped from these two were an explosive bow and an explosive axe, both silver ranked. As expected, he failed to knock off the armor of fortitude, but these two silver weapons were also considered excellent loot. He would sell them later to his brother Shenxian. He should pay attention to hidden items from now on. He returned to the village and breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, a safe zone. Lately, he had been constantly hunted. His nerves were on edge. Before heading to the Misty Mountain, he needed to do something here. Just as he was about to do this, a loud sound rang out, as if someone was calling him. He began to look around and remembered that his communication device was connected to his gaming helmet. He returned to reality, took off his helmet, and saw that his friend Hu Shaoxian was calling him via video. He was very happy to see her and immediately answered the call, excitedly saying that she had finally contacted him. This time, she had been gone for too long. Right now she was taking a bath. She said hi to him with a smile and asked if he liked her gift. He looked away embarrassedly and asked if she was completely stupid. Why would she make a video call when she was taking a bath? She answered him that her training time on Saturn was actually worth its weight in gold. There was almost never a network connection there, so she could only contact him while bathing. She stood up and asked if her serious Liu was embarrassed. If he wanted, she would show him a little more. He immediately closed his eyes and started scolding her, telling her to quickly get back to the bath. She got out of the bath and wrapped herself in a towel, saying that she had been wanting to call him for a long time. This Saturn was so empty, she was completely alone here, there was no one to even talk to. He thought, when awakened ones reach a high rank, they often go into space in search of purer energy fields for training. But this requires colossal expenses and resources, which are precisely what the Shaoxian family has at its disposal. He noticed, you can immediately see an insanely rich awakened 7th rank. After all, she had been stuck in space ever since her awakening. She shrugged and said that she had no other choice. Her grandfather thought Earth was unsafe. MC said that he himself wanted to talk to her about New Origin. It seemed this game was far from as simple as it seemed. She asked with a smirk if he himself had turned out to be too weak and was now blaming her gift for everything. He exclaimed that was not the case at all. He had met a mentor in the game, and even though she was just an NPC, she immediately realized that he had serious health problems in the real world. She asked in surprise, so she's a woman? He asked, what does that have to do with anything? Xiaoxian thought for a moment and said that she herself didn't know all the details. They say that scientists originally discovered a spiritual world inside a fallen meteorite. With military support, they conducted research and turned this discovery into a game that regular players can now enter. Her grandfather once mentioned that the monsters and NPCs there weren't just a bunch of pixels or lines of code. They originally existed in that spiritual dimension. Most likely, his mentor was one of them. Liu was amazed. It was simply incredible. It was literally like a portal to another world. So, his mentor really did exist? Xiaoxian said that they initially began developing this technology precisely because the game could influence the physical state of awakened ones in reality. She immediately thought that this might be his only chance for salvation. She looked at him seriously and told him not to even think about dying. This even made him a little nervous, and she, throwing on her clothes, asked if he had been experiencing any attacks of muscle weakness lately. He turned away, embarrassed, and exclaimed that he'd handle everything himself, and that she should stop getting dressed right in front of the camera. At that very moment, his sister ran into the room, saying he'd received a package. She caught him with his tablet, turned away from him, and Xiaoxian getting dressed. MC immediately understood what she must be thinking, and Xiaoxian calmly greeted her and introduced herself. Liu immediately turned off the tablet, then excitedly waved his hands, trying to explain to his sister that things weren't quite as she thought, but it was too late. Yan immediately ran to her mother, saying that her brother was there alone with a girl, and MC rushed after her. He grabbed her by the shirt and asked her to stop, otherwise he'd run out of strength to hold her. After that, he told her everything and showed her the helmet. She enthusiastically took it in her hands and asked, "So that girl gave it to him?" He asked her to be quiet, otherwise his parents would hear. He didn't want them to know he was planning to play at night. His mom would take it away right away. She looked at him with pleading eyes, saying that she wanted to play too, and he apologized to her with a bitter smile. But when he logged in, a warning popped up. One helmet is only linked to one player's retina. She said it was so cool, she wanted one too, but one helmet costs a whole million star coins. He was very surprised at the price, and she said that it was a limited premium version. It perfectly conveys all 5 senses in the virtual world, ones only the rich and elite have. They gave him a gift, and he didn't even bother to find out the price. They say that if you lie down in this on the fields of fantasy, you can even smell the subtle scent of mist flowers. He smiled nervously and noted that he was now truly in debt to Xiaoxian. Yan said that if he didn't have $1 million for a helmet, a gaming bracelet for 900 coins would do just as well. Yu popped into the room and called out to his sister with displeasure, asking if she was pestering Liu with her whims again. Had she forgotten that he was in poor health? She apologized to him and honestly admitted that she had forgotten about it. After that, MC transferred 1,000 coins to each of their accounts and told them to take the money and buy gaming bracelets for themselves. They shouldn't worry, since he had recently earned this money in the game. They were very surprised, asking him where he got so much money, and he hugged them both, telling them not to worry about shopping anymore. They could leave it to him. They both burst into tears from happiness and his kindness. Yan immediately rushed to hug him, causing him to almost fall, and Yu worriedly called out to his sister, telling her not to pester him so much. Liu told them to level up for now, and to tell him once they reached level 10, and they were absolutely not to rush into choosing a class. Did they understand? They agreed to it, and he thought he had already become a bard, and he had saved those 2 hidden class tokens for Yu and Yan. If this game really could increase the power of awakened beings, then in their time it would become an invaluable key to survival. His sister asked what was his nickname. They would find it as soon as they logged in. He smiled nervously, saying only that he was not in the starting village now, and she asked, had they heard of Big Dream? You noticed that the name was strange. Who was that? She said enthusiastically that Big Dream was officially the best player now. Her classmates say he's incredibly strong and everyone wants to be in his group. She turned to her brother and asked if he knew him. MC was even surprised. He had no idea he was that famous. They also say he's snagged a ton of first-string boss kills, defeated a top-tier solo player, and is now being hunted by a mob. She's sure he's a high-ranking awakened in the real world too. Liu felt bad about disappointing her, and then Yu dragged his sister out of the room and said that their older brother needed to rest, and she started getting indignant because she hadn't finished yet. After they left, MC injected himself with a medicine for muscle atrophy and stretched. He spent 10,000 coins on 5 vials of the medicine. At least he doesn't have to worry about sudden attacks of muscle weakness anytime soon. But even though the attacks have stopped, that doesn't change the fact that he only has 6 months to live. The well-being of his family and his own only chance for survival, all of it is hidden within the game. He has no choice but to keep fighting. He logged into the game and, seeing the other players, noticed that there were far more people who had passed through the cave than he thought. There were even level 8 players here. How did they even manage to get in here? He noticed a crowd at the gate and wondered what was going on. When level 9, Liu approached him and asked if he had also come for the apprenticeship quest. It was no use. Lady Angela still hadn't opened the door for anyone. Liu didn't quite understand what he was talking about and asked if he didn't know. This was the estate of Lady Angela, the great alchemist. They had deliberately bypassed all the monsters in the Batcave to get here and try to become her apprentices. MC was very surprised. He hadn't even suspected such a thing. Was it really possible to do that? Liu threw his arm over his shoulder and asked if he was a complete newbie. He would explain everything to him now. Had he heard of Big Dream? Someone had seen him become an apprentice and receive the temple's inheritance. They say it's the strongest class in the game right now. He noticed his nickname and level were hidden, so he thought he was just imitating him. Liu smiled nervously. He hadn't even realized anyone had seen him then. The guy said he understood everything. He had a ton of fans now. Of course, he was the best player and the owner of the strongest class. Tons of people were still combing the Batcave in hopes of getting the quest for the temple's legacy. It's a pity they didn't know that Lunaria had long since left. A player named Moten overheard their conversation and let out an irritated laugh, asking, does he really think he's the strongest? That's nonsense. No matter how cool he is, his class is a support class. Once he gets Lady Angela's legacy, that upstart will be finished. He'll crush him in no time. MC got nervous. Had his class's features really already leaked online? Information about him is spreading too quickly. Those 2 from the 12th squad are probably involved. He asked, who exactly is this Lady Angela? The guy asked, doesn't he even read forum guides? How did he even manage to get past the Batcave? He gave him a healing potion and told him to just look at the description for this one. Liu didn't even know it could have detailed descriptions. Besides the fact that the creator of the healing potion recipe was Lady Angela, nothing interesting or new was written. Now MC understood why everyone wanted to get to her. Apparently, all the potion recipes in this game were created by her. The guy proudly confirmed this. The recipes for almost 99% of the potions he could currently obtain were created by Lady Angela. Liu smiled wryly, asking why he was so proud of this, and Moten suddenly shouted in displeasure that he died 3 times in this cave with the bats on his way out. He's been waiting for 2 hours. Let Angela come out. He came to ask to be her apprentice. Then Liu told him to stop yelling. Did he really think anyone would come out in response to his screams? But it really worked. Angela's guardian, the mechanical butterfly Keiki, emerged from the estate. She ordered them to stop making noise, and MC, seeing that she was level 99, was very surprised. Motun immediately ran to her and exclaimed that finally someone deigned to come out. He was the one who lured her out, so they shouldn't bother him. But as soon as he approached her, she struck him with her sword, inflicting fatal damage. At first, Motun didn't even understand what had happened and was confused. This was a safe zone, after all. After that, he disappeared, and Liu thought, what speed? He didn't even notice her swing. If she had attacked him, he wouldn't have had time to cast the spell. KK turned to him and called him by his nickname, telling him to come in. MC was surprised by this, and that he was even honored to see the great alchemist, but the others were even more surprised. They had no idea that Big Dream had been with him the whole time. Liu turned to the guy and apologized. He didn't want to hide it from him. He was grateful for his help. His information had been very useful. Liu practically burst into tears of happiness. He had unexpectedly met his idol like that. MC went into the estate, waving goodbye to him, and he delightedly exclaimed that in person he looked even younger than people said. How cool he was. The others began to complain that he was the only one allowed in, and Liu ordered them all to shut up. They were disturbing his idol's training. They responded by telling him to shut up himself. After all, he hadn't even recognized him yet. Meanwhile, KK led Liu down a beautifully planted corridor and into the alchemist's office. Angela greeted him with a smile and remarked that he looked a bit weak. He smiled awkwardly and asked why she'd called him, and she asked if he'd been scared to death when KK attacked. As an apology, she gave him a vial of a potion, and when he opened the description, he was very surprised. It was a potion of swiftness, which increases agility by 800% and is also instant action. He exclaimed with delight that it had an incredible effect, many times more powerful than his own skills. Angela said that, in addition to the swiftness potion, she could give him a bunch of other useful elixirs. He was already overjoyed, but she said, of course, if he accepts her legacy and changes his class to alchemist, he will have everything he desires. His expression immediately changed and she winked at him, saying, the conditions are very simple. He just needs to give up his current class. He doesn't need to worry about the restrictions on changing classes. She'll sort everything out herself. So is it a good deal? MC couldn't understand what this woman was planning, so he chose to refuse the potion she had just given him and her offer. Her gaze instantly became serious, and he said that for the time being, he had no plans to change his class. If she had no more questions for him, he would go. She smirked and asked, what if she said she could cure his muscular atrophy? He immediately froze, and she said that his mentor wasn't the only one who knew about his real body's problems. She really could help him with the treatment. So, maybe he would change his mind after all? He seriously considered it. After all, this was why he came to this game. A disease that is considered an incurable death sentence on Earth? Could she really cure it? He said that even though his mentor sometimes behaved erratically, taking things that belonged to others without asking, and was generally cunning and cold like a true devil, he still wanted to continue his path, carrying on the temple's legacy. And frankly, he liked the bard class. After that, he headed for the exit and thought to his teacher, he had just missed such an incredible opportunity. If she didn't help him now, he would haunt her for the rest of his days. After that, a system notification appeared. He had completed the hidden quest, Angela's first test, requiring him to refuse the alchemist Angela's offer. This unlocked the next quest, Angela's second test, in which he needed to survive the onslaught of KK's butterfly for 1 minute. As soon as he read the notification, the butterfly attacked him, and he barely managed to dodge. He wondered what was going on, wondering why this hidden quest had suddenly activated. Angela laughed and remarked that he was a good man for managing to dodge. Had he really prepared in advance? He replied that although she was great at hiding her emotions, this person, as soon as he entered this room, immediately wafted an undisguised thirst for blood. She noticed his insight and ordered Keiki to kill him, not giving him time to cast the spell. And when she pounced on him again, MC managed to dodge and, running to the table with the potion, said that he finished casting the spell the moment he turned to leave. And no matter how sweetly she smiled, he doesn't believe in selfless kindness. KK got very close to him. He barely managed to jump aside and thought that she was so fast. And how did she manage to catch up with him? 38 seconds left. He just dodged again and wondered how much agility she even had. 22 seconds left. He dodged another blow and began to pray that time would run out soon. Angela noticed something was wrong. Even if this brat had activated the skill, it still shouldn't have been enough to dodge KK's attacks. A thought occurred to her, and she glanced at the table, but the swiftness potion was no longer there. Liu laughed and said, she finally noticed. The potion's effect exceeded all his expectations. No wonder this was a sacred-ranked potion from Lady Angela herself. His agility had now exceeded 1,000 points. She exclaimed in fury, how dare he drink her sacred potion without asking? She ordered KK to show no mercy to this scoundrel, and then she raised her sword over her head and MC became nervous. Less than 10 seconds remained. He had to dodge this blow. While he was running away from her, Angela crossed his path, and then a brilliant idea occurred to him. Approaching her, he abruptly jumped back, and at that very moment, KK swung her sword, but upon seeing her creator, she immediately interrupted the attack. And finally, time ran out. The system reported that he had completed the hidden task. The agility boost from the Starry Breath skill and the swiftness potion dissipated. He sat down right on the floor to catch his breath, already glad that it was over, But for some reason, the butterfly rose again and walked toward him, dragging the sparkling sword behind it. He was terrified and confused. Time had run out. Keiki pounced on him, and he reflexively covered his head and wondered if this was the end. But suddenly, someone knocked the weapon out of the mechanical butterfly's hands. It was Lunaria. She told her student that he was quite brave, and she clearly heard him scold her. He called out to her excitedly, after which she patted him on the head and said that he believed in the rules and time set by the enemy and backed himself into a corner. He is still too naive. She turned to Angela and said that she was also good, since she set a 1-minute limit. Let her deign to abide by the rules. Angela exclaimed in displeasure, and who asked her to interfere. This is actually her test, not her sister's. Upon learning that they were sisters, Liu's mouth opened wide in surprise. Lunaria decided to introduce her to him. This is her younger sister Angela. She called her to heal his real body, but this stubborn woman decided everything herself and declared that she will help only if he passes her test. She looked at her with displeasure and noted, her test was clearly out of control. It looked more like a personal vendetta. She asked in response, isn't he the only successor to her temple legacy? Isn't their temple a great place? How else would she know how good he was if she didn't test him? MC stared at them in shock. They were both real devils, and yet the mentor had done all this for him. Lunaria told him that she simply didn't want the successor to their temple legacy to die prematurely. He would be of much more use to her alive. Angela smirked and said that she herself had lost her temper and only intervened because his fiery speech had offended her. At her age, being so sentimental was simply sickening. Lunaria immediately grabbed her and irritably told her to stop talking nonsense and get to work. Otherwise, she would send her to the next world. She refused. What did she care whether he lived or died? He hadn't passed her final test yet. Liu asked in horror, what final test? The system notified him about the activation of a hidden unique quest. Angela's third trial. Brew 1 bottle of a low-ranked swiftness potion. Lunaria asked if she was serious. Hadn't she spent a whole month creating this swiftness potion? She responded with a smirk. If she doesn't believe in her student so much, he should just admit defeat and leave. She still had a lot of things to do today. MC asked the teacher if creating a swiftness potion was really that difficult. She answered that even though her younger sister lacked combat talent, the effects of her potions were truly astounding. This swiftness potion, even though it was low-ranked, gave a whopping 50% increase to agility. He was very surprised. 50%. That was almost on par with Bard skills. Lunaria agreed with him. After all, she only started creating potions to prove she was better than her. This was just child's play. Angela exclaimed irritably, this isn't kindergarten at all. Everything bards are capable of, she can replicate with her potions. Lunaria added, creating such powerful potions is associated with enormous risk at every stage. When she was developing this potion of swiftness, she blew up 3 whole labs. Angela indignantly asked her to be quiet, then put on her glasses and told Liu not to waste her time. If he wanted her help, let him pass the test. But she advised him to watch more closely, since she would only show him once. He prepared himself and decided to use the Eye of Insight to observe every detail of her movements. She began to explain and show him everything. The first step is to extract the seeds of the starburst herb. They are hidden deep within the leaves. When extracting, you cannot use a pestle. You must squeeze the seeds out with your fingers. She reached the 14th step. Leave the ice essence in the air to come to a state of equilibrium. Gentle hand rotations will help speed up this process, but you need to constantly monitor the reaction. Step 23. The distillation flame must be maintained. MC didn't even blink while she showed him everything, and he was convinced that she truly was a great alchemist of the sacred rank. Her movements were incredibly precise and smooth. 1 second of distraction, and he would miss the most important detail. If he remembered correctly, the profession ranks are divided into apprentice, novice, master, expert, master, grandmaster, and sacred rank. And although alchemist is considered only a peaceful profession, those who have reached the sacred rank are truly 1 in a million. And finally, Angela reached step 30, the final one. You need to add a fingernail-sized crystal of wind element to the solution. There is no need to rush, they must combine completely. After that, she poured the finished potion into a vial and said that she was finished. Now it was his turn. He only needed to repeat her actions exactly. Easy peasy, right? He's such an arrogant brat. Since he didn't even take any notes, now he'll see how he'll embarrass himself. And to keep him from destroying her lab, Kiki will cut him in half at the first mistake. Liu smiled nervously. This girl will be even worse than his teacher. But she explained everything down to the smallest detail, so it was only to his advantage. Lunaria touched his shoulder and asked seriously, can he handle it? He shouldn't overestimate his strength. He decisively answered that he wanted to try, and she smiled nervously. At that moment, her sister thought, alchemists don't have support from the game system. So the complexity of this process has long since gone beyond what people from Earth call a game. At one time, she spent a lot of effort developing this potion, enduring endless ridicule from her sister. Now she will find out what her student is capable of. MC approached the table, and Lunaria asked her sister if he succeeded. She would really help them, right? She asked if she was so confident in his success. She answered that this world had indeed changed under the influence of Earthlings, and many simple professions now allow you to learn skills automatically. However, her temple heritage, like her craft as an alchemist, had escaped these interventions. She knows, right, that simply acquiring a class token isn't enough to attain the Bard class. To gain the recognition of the temple elders, the successor must recite a long and complex ancient contract without a single hesitation. Make even one mistake, and the temple will reject you forever, because you only get one chance. This covenant is written in an ancient language that never existed on Earth. She thought he would spend at least 3 days trying to memorize words that were completely incomprehensible to him, but 10 minutes was enough for him. She read the text only once, and he memorized every line, perfectly reproducing both the order and the pronunciation. Angela was greatly surprised and continued. Then she asked him about his memory. It was far beyond the capabilities of an ordinary person, and he told her his story. When he was 8, his parents noticed that he remembered everything at first sight. They were overjoyed and proud that they were raising a genius. His memories seemed limitless. He could instantly absorb any amount of information and never forget it again. But soon after, he suddenly lost consciousness. Doctors diagnosed him with muscular atrophy. Then his parents decided that his gift was actually a curse. They say that a great mind only brings sorrow, and geniuses don't live long. Now she understands. The 30-step process isn't even a warm-up for him. She was worried whether he would be able to put the theory into practice, but apparently her fears were in vain. Angela immediately glanced at him and was very surprised. He had just taken the wind crystal, which meant he was already at the final stage. During this entire process, KK hadn't even moved, which meant he was doing everything absolutely correctly. But how is that even possible? Having finished, Liu showed them the result of his work, and the system reported he had created a low-rank swiftness potion, which gives a 50% increase to agility. He passed Angela's 3rd test, his level increased to 13, and his free stat points reached 5. Angela checked the potions and was amazed. This boy had actually recreated the swiftness potion after only glancing at the recipe once. For an alchemist, the more potions he develops, the faster he runs into a dead end due to memory limitations. Each step in development requires a huge amount of theoretical knowledge, so absolute memory is the cherished dream of any alchemist. She even tried to create a memory-expanding potion, but due to the lack of analogs, all attempts ended in failure. And finally, before her, stood someone with truly absolute memory. While Lunaria was hugging Liu, he suddenly felt KK approach him, but before he could do anything, she injected him with something. He lost consciousness and fell, and Lunaria indignantly called out to her sister, exclaiming, "What is she doing? What did she inject him with?" She told her not to worry. She just wanted to explore his soul source, to find out what secrets his phenomenal memory was hiding. She touched his forehead and moved into his consciousness, finding herself in a cave. As she moved forward, she thought, the soul source reflects a person's mental world. People with strong memories usually have a much more powerful mental world than ordinary mortals. For most, the soul source is like a thin stream. She saw Lunaria's source. It bubbles like a powerful waterfall. How it infuriates her, considering how ugly and angry she is. The stream led her to the exit of the cave. She had already thought that this boy's source was also quite ordinary, but when she exited the cave, she saw something truly amazing, a huge wave. But that's not all. The water pushed her forward, leading her to the temple, the memory palace. She touched a column of this magnificent building and thought, legends say that only great deities with incredible fortitude are capable of erecting a memory palace in the depths of their consciousness. Suddenly, someone ordered her to leave, and a powerful shock wave erupted from the palace, throwing her out of his consciousness and causing her to fall to the floor. Her sister worriedly asked what was wrong, and she exclaimed that a real memory palace had been erected in this boy's mental world. Lunaria was surprised, and MC finally came to his senses and asked, "What kind of memory palace is this?" Angela said with a smile that he knew how to surprise. She was seeing a memory palace in person for the first time, and it was simply an incredible sight. He laughed and noted that he really did have a habit of putting all his knowledge into neat little compartments. Lunaria smiled, proud of her student, and Angela agreed to help them, but she had one condition. Her sister immediately pinched her cheek, indignant at her words, and she, hiding behind her student, said that she wanted Liu to inherit her skills. He asked how she knew his real name, and she immediately hit him on the head, telling him to address her as teacher from now on. Since she had looked into his soul source, she naturally knew his name. Lunaria said, as long as Liu preserves his temple legacy, she doesn't care which ignoramus he learns survival skills from. Angela was indignant and asked her to repeat it. Who was she calling it, ignoramus? Then she should never dare ask her for potions ever again. MC doubtfully asked the teacher if he could really speak to her like that, and she answered him, "They bards are not that conservative. In this world, survival is above all else." Okay, enough of these games. She told her sister to give her a potion that would save Liu, and she replied that she hadn't developed such a cure yet. Just hearing this, Lunaria became furious. She lashed out at her sister and exclaimed, "They've wasted so much time, and she claims there's nothing she can do to help." She responded by exclaiming that she never said she had no ideas at all. After that, she proudly showed them her reincarnation potion, If this kid accepts it, then even if his real body dies, his soul will remain in this world. Isn't that a great way out of this situation? Lunaria was speechless for a second, then lashed out at her again and screamed that she would kill her today and pretend she never had a sister. Angela, in tears, asked her to wait. She had another way. This method, although incredibly difficult, was still feasible. Legend has it that a book called the Alchemical Treatise of Sticks was lost in one of the corners of this so-called game world. The book describes the recipe for a special potion. They say that after drinking it, you'll have to endure 8 hours of hellish pain, with your bones breaking from the inside, but then your entire body will rise from the ashes, shedding its old shell and gaining new life. MC was very surprised, and Lunaria, puzzled, tugged at the butterfly's antennae and asked where this contract was. But here's the rub. Angela didn't know anything. Lunaria had expected this and sighed heavily, saying, "So much chatter, and it's still useless, a waste of time." Keiki angrily punched her to tell her not to bother her, and Liu said, "Even if they find this legendary treatise and prepare the potion, he'll drink it in the game. How will that help with his muscle atrophy in real life?" The teacher told him to leave it to her. The main thing was to have the potion ready, and she would find a way to transfer its effects to his real body. Angela told him not to worry. As soon as he found the treatise, she would personally take care of it and prepare the perfect potion. Lunaria asked with a smirk, "Does she just want to get her hands on this treatise?" She decided to use Liu's luck to get the treasure. How mean that was. She indignantly exclaimed in response that she sincerely wanted to help him, after which she squeezed her alchemical notes through the system and said, "The recipes for potions suitable for his current level are written here." He could use her laboratory at any time, and he could also take rare herbs from her garden without asking. He was delighted and thanked her. And then she asked her older sister, did she see this? She cared about her student with all her heart. After that, he took up making potions. He prepared several to increase agility, attack, and defense, increasing everything by 50%. After seeing the result, Angela praised him. He had brewed so many potions on his first try. He had real talent, she wasn't mistaken. Lunaria told him, as for the clues to the alchemical treatise sticks, he should look for them in the depths of the Misty Mountains. Something of this level simply couldn't go unnoticed on an already explored map. She and Angela are not here in the flesh, and besides, this world imposes many restrictions on their actions, so in the future he will have to rely on himself. MC thought, not in the flesh? Does that mean they also entered this game from another world? They saw him to the exit and said goodbye, and Lunaria told her sister that she didn't even know if letting him become her apprentice was a wish come true or her devious trick. She winked and replied that it was simply mutual benefit. Liu, meanwhile, approached the gate and wondered why it was so quiet here. Seeing Keike, he immediately understood why. Since there was a level 99 monster here, capable of finishing off a player with one blow, it was no wonder everyone had scattered. As soon as he stepped outside the estate, his movements were monitored. Some guy hid around the corner and contacted his comrade, telling him to quickly report to the captain that Big Dream had left and was heading towards the Misty Mountains. At that moment, MC received a message from his sister. It turned out she had already managed to join a guild called Pavilion Full of Flowers and leveled up to 6th level. They went around the cave with bats and were going to level up at the entrance to the Misty Mountains. She barely managed to secure a spot for him, and they met at the entrance to the mountains. Liu was even surprised. She decided to help him level up. He texted his brother to ask about this guild and why he wasn't with Yan, to which he replied, he was only level 4, and Yan's guild only accepted girls, so he hadn't been accepted. MC thought about it. He'd never heard of such a guild before, but he decided to put it aside and went to the meeting place to assess their strength and reliability. A crowd of girls was already waiting for him there. Yan noticed him and immediately called him over, then jumped up and down with joy and said that he'd finally arrived. But why couldn't she see his nickname and level? He told her that he'd simply hidden them and decided to change the subject, saying that he'd leveled up pretty quickly. The girls gave him disapproving looks. And Jasmine said, another Big Dream impersonator. He thinks hiding his nickname will make him seem mysterious. An archer named Pomegranate agreed. If they hadn't just lost one of their bats in the cave, she would never have agreed to take an outsider. Hibiscus turned to Red Rose and asked if they wouldn't be dragging along a burden if they leveled this suspicious guy. Liu carefully examined each of them. 1 hidden assassin class and 3 backline fighters. It looked like their tank, who had been taking all the damage, had died in the cave. No wonder they agreed to take him. They just needed someone in the front line to absorb the hits. Red Rose approached him and shook his hand, saying she was the vice leader of the Pavilion Full of Flowers Guild. MC greeted her back and introduced himself simply as Yan's brother, prompting the girls to immediately mock him. Pomegranate asked if he was even afraid to reveal his nickname. Had Big Dream himself really descended upon them? Jasmine told her not to joke like that. His weapon was ranked number 1, and now let her look at his pathetic gear. He probably picked it up in the starting village just yesterday. Yan immediately defended him, saying that wasn't true. He'd been playing this game for a long time. Liu patted her on the head and said that everything was fine, and thanked them for helping his sister level up. She was still very young, so they should forgive her if she was acting a little frivolous. She was indignant and asked when she had ever acted like that. Red Rose was a little taken aback. He had just been openly mocked, and he didn't care. He had excellent self-control. She told him that when they were going around the Bat Cave, their Vanguard girls couldn't get out, so today the role of their tank falls to him, okay? He agreed, and he led the group forward and thought, lately, problems have been piling up one after another. He has absolutely no time to look in the monster chat. He hopes he hasn't missed anything. He'll help Yan level up, and then he'll get to it. 10 minutes ago, in the monster chat, Bat furiously wrote that Big Dream took 2 hidden class tokens. Sandsnake asked, didn't he swear before that he hid them more securely than anyone could? Bat called the boss, Silver Wolf Cub, and said that this guy had already crossed all boundaries. The Wood Demon told them to give it to him. He had just arrived at Misty Mountain. He would make him regret it. Time passed, and the group encountered the first monster on the mountain. MC stepped forward, and Red Rose began issuing commands. She told Pomegranate and Jasmine to attack from afar and limit the demon's mobility, and Hibiscus should monitor their protector's health and heal him promptly. The monster was bound by magic, then extended a branch towards the mage, but Liu immediately cut it off, for which Red Rose praised him. She rushed to the attack and told Pomegranate to take advantage of the opportunity and shower him with arrows. She ordered Jasmine to hold on tighter, as he was almost at low health, and she replied that everything was under control. After this, Red Rose delivered the finishing blow, cutting the monster in half, and the girls began to praise her skills. MC mentally noted that she was cool-headed, acted decisively, and her commands were clear and timely, and the team completely trusted her. Looks like his sister found a great guild. Let her level with them for now. Red Rose approached him and praised him for his excellent reactions. He must be playing a speed warrior. With such a vanguard, there was nothing to worry about. He responded by saying she flattered him, but the other girls weren't so kind. Pomegranate said, so what if he took a few hits? Even her grandma could win with him just by standing aside. Hibiscus agreed, and Yan hastened to support her brother, saying he had fought really well just now. Suddenly, branches flew at them from somewhere above. Luckily, he noticed and managed to jump aside in time with his sister. The girls immediately prepared for battle, and a tree demon, the boss, and 2 monsters, one rare, one elite, emerged from the forest. The boss had 20,000 health, which made the girls nervous. Liu exclaimed, what the hell? 3 special monsters appeared at once? Red Rose ordered everyone to retreat quickly, as they definitely couldn't handle them. And MC, taking his sister by the hand, ran after them, noting that this was the right decision. Now the only way out is to get off the Misty Mountain, but the demons blocked their path, and they surrounded them, giving them no escape route. And then the boss monster extended his hand to them and said that they would not leave. The girls were surprised because they hadn't heard the monster speak yet, and Red Rose already thought they were finished. But then, Liu used his skill and cast a spell on the monster, preventing it from moving, and then said, they are in plain sight. There is a huge boulder behind them. They will take cover there. The monsters are too huge, so they have an advantage in speed. When they hid, Red Rose asked what they will do next. MC changed weapons and told her that since things turned out this way, they will have to accept the fight. Hibiscus displeasedly told him that even if his skill holds him back for a moment, now is not the time to play the hero. Jasmine agreed with her. Has he ever faced special monsters? How will they defeat them? And then Pomegranate told them to look at his weapon. They immediately recognized the dagger of the fallen, and were very surprised, because this meant that he was Big Dream. But they did not want to believe it, and Jasmine told him to prove that he was Big Dream. But he ignored them, because right now, he was discussing strategy with Red Rose. After they discussed everything, he put a buff on them, giving 50% to agility and attack, which the girls were surprised, and Pomegranate asked, is this really a support skill for the Stallion class, and can it be used continuously? Liu warned that his skill lasts 100 seconds, but he will give them a potion with a similar effect, which lasts only 40 seconds. 2 bottles for each, but they must use it at the right moment. They will finish with this quickly. He waved his hand and told Red Rose that they will soon be discovered. Let her drink a potion of swiftness and a potion of giant, and then attack the elite monster first. Jasmine and Pomegranate should attack from afar and try to draw the elite monster away, while Hibiscus should monitor the situation and support Red Rose in time. She asked, what about the boss and the rare monster? He emerged from hiding and confidently told her that he would take on the 2. Yan was even surprised. She hadn't known her brother was such a reliable person, even in a game. After that, Red Rose drank the potion and rushed to attack. She immediately noticed that her damage against the elite monster had become quite high, and her evasion and physical speed had also increased. The other girls' damage stats had also reached unprecedented levels. She couldn't believe that the 4 of them were able to deal with an elite monster so easily, and all this was thanks to him alone. If only he had agreed to join them, they would have been unrivaled. But she immediately dismissed the thought and wondered what she was even thinking. She turned to check on him. Fighting alone against two special monsters should be incredibly difficult. But it turned out to be just the opposite. He had already killed the rare monster and obtained equipment from it, and the girls were finally convinced that he really was Big Dream and were delighted. Yan was hiding behind a rock, and upon learning that her brother was Big Dream, the famous player, she was even more surprised than they were. He was fighting the boss at the time, and the demon told him that he never expected that he had actually received the temple's legacy. MC asked, "Do even wild monsters know about this?" The demon called him a foolish youth. The former greatness of this legacy will go to waste in the hands of an arrogant fool like him. Today, he will tear him apart to sate his anger. Liu said with a smirk, "Unfortunately, he is nowhere near his speed. He himself understands perfectly well that he won't even be able to touch him." He cast a spell and cast the Curse of the Thunder God on the enemy, increasing the damage he takes by 100%. MC rushed to attack, and the demon whispered, "He really is so similar to that great man, a simply striking resemblance." At that moment, he struck him, and it was fatal. The boss's body evaporated, and the system congratulated him on his first kill of the Wood Demon Chieftain. He leveled up several times and received equipment. The other players were shocked by the notifications and began calling Liu Grand Master. He glanced at the system window and noted with a smile that he hadn't received rewards for leveling up and getting his first kill in a long time. He decided to check out the treasures he'd received, and he ended up receiving silver rank bracers, a cloak, and boots of the waning moon, as well as 2 scrolls for skill transfer and skill mastery. He was overjoyed. He had finally updated his equipment. Fortunately, the stat bonuses of the elite set are permanent. Afterwards, a system assistant appeared before him and congratulated him on becoming the first player whose agility exceeded 100. As a reward, he received the one-of-a-kind hidden skill Lightning Shadow. With this, he can summon a lightning-based spirit clone that inherits 60% of its creator's stats. This skill also increases lightning damage by 10%. Lasting only 10 seconds. The system assistant gave him additional information. He can mentally command the clone. MC exclaimed that although this skill requires a lot of mana, its power is simply incredible. But what are these 2 scrolls for? She explained that a skill transfer scroll allows you to transfer an active skill from old equipment to a new one. For example, the Elite Necklace's flash active skill can be easily transferred to any other item. Liu didn't yet know what to use this for, so he decided to save it for later, and the assistant explained how the mastery scroll works. With it, he can select any skill and instantly increase its mastery level, bypassing lengthy training. He decided to try this skill right away. He used the scroll and increased his mastery of the Song of the God of War to the intermediate rank. Now, his attacks are increased by 100%, and the effect lasts for a whopping 200 seconds. And that's just the average skill level. So what's the limit of the Bard class? A new system notification has appeared. Congratulations to player Red Rose on your first kill of an elite wood demon. Upon learning that their battle was also over, he decided to return to the girls, who were praising their commander and rejoicing in their victory. MC approached her, congratulating her on her achievement, and she said with a smile that they would never have managed without him. He said she was just flattering him, and then his younger sister ran up to him and delightedly asked why he didn't tell her that he was Big Dream, and she was also going to help him level up. He replied that he wasn't going to hide it from her on purpose, and Jasmine excitedly asked if they could get together as a party again sometime. Hibiscus asked him if she could call him brother too, but Yan sternly objected, saying he was only her brother. Liu gave her the Wind Cultist emblem and told her to hide it well. It would come in handy when she changed classes at level 10. She was very surprised, and the girls said they'd heard it was an incredibly strong class. They were even envious. Yan was overjoyed and thanked her brother, just as a player named Captain Tabby, the commander of the 12th Squad, laughed from the sidelines. He laughed and remarked that it was such a touching scene. He killed people from their 12th Squad, and now he's hiding behind women's skirts like a cowardly turtle, and he didn't come here alone, but with Kitten and Cake and the rest of the squad, Whiskey and Chocolate Cookie. Pomegranate was surprised why he didn't look human, and Red Rose explained that there was a druid class in the game that could maintain a form with a small amount of mana, and that this was currently the only known way to hide one's true form in the game. She thought that the captain of the 12th Squad had already reached level 17. He was incredibly strong. All his companions also had hidden classes. The influence of a large guild's wealth was immediately apparent. The girls began whispering. Was this the formidable 12th Squad? How did Big Dream manage to cross their path? Rumor had it that he single-handedly took out 2 officers and stole their weapons. Yan glanced worriedly at her brother, and he told her not to worry. Everything was fine. He stepped forward and asked, "Looks like someone doesn't know how to lose," and ran off to complain to the elders. They should stop acting like they were out for revenge and get down to business. Were they here to take his weapon, or were they aiming for the emblem? Kitten was indignant and exclaimed, "Who was complaining here?" Tabby raised his hand, asking her to be quiet, and said, she didn't think Big Dream was as sharp-tongued as he was strong in battle. He liked it. In fact, they came here to offer him friendship. He's managed to make a lot of enemies lately, Doesn't he already know? Bloody Blade has long declared a hunt for him all over the world. In his announcement, he called him a vile coward who attacked him stealthily with a hidden artifact. Therefore, he is posting a reward of 10,000 star coins for information on his current location. MC chuckled and asked, did he really write that? He didn't think he was such an inept loser. Tabby spread his arms wide and said that now the Invincibles have teamed up with Bloody Blade to hunt him down. So he is sincerely outraged by such injustice. Let him join their 12th squad. They guarantee his complete safety. He asked why they would show such nobility and protect him for nothing. Tabby answered him, of course, the trust must be mutual. They just want to know where exactly he got his hidden class. And they would also like to take a look at the treasure map that dropped from the Bloody Blade. Purely for the sake of joint research. Liu thought, the treasure map of the White Fox clan? He had already forgotten that it was in his inventory. When he examined it before, there was not a single clue. Apparently, special conditions are needed to activate the hints, and then he remembered that the mentor had mentioned this. Would the search for the alchemical treatise of the River Styx also require a map as a guide? Could it be somehow connected with the map of the White Fox clan? Tabby called out to him discontentedly and asked, so he had made a decision? He apologized to him. He was just thinking. Even if he was not thinking about his class, and he did not intend to show them the treasure map. He can take care of himself, so they shouldn't bother. Tabby smirked, as if he'd been expecting this, and then Cookie lunged. He flew towards Yan like a shadow and struck, drawing blood. MC protected his sister, taking the blow himself, and told him to aim for him from now on. Jasmine was very indignant that they were attacking without warning right after being refused, and asked, was their 12th squad so shameless? Red Rose told her to back off, and Cookie jumped back, shocked, thinking that he had blocked his sudden attack. How crazy is this guy's reflexes? Seeing that he couldn't cope, Tabby decided to finish off Big Dream himself, and he asked with a smirk, was he serious? Couldn't he have done that right away? They were just wasting their time. Red Rose became worried and asked, maybe they could help them? There are too many of them, and they all have hidden classes. Big Dream alone definitely can't handle it, but if they interfere, it will mean a war between the pavilion full of flowers and the 12th squad. As vice leader, she can't take on such a responsibility. Liu turned to her with a smile and asked her to take his sister away. This wasn't their battle anyway. Red Rose obeyed him, took Yan's hand, and they left. But before she did, Yan gave him a worried look. Tabby decided to give him one last chance and ordered him to spill everything he knew about his class token and hand over the treasure map. MC rushed forward and said there was no need to talk. -1 for starters. With that, he killed Cake, and she noticed that he was even faster than before. Whiskey took a swig of alcohol to set it on fire, but before he could do anything, Liu stabbed him. Cookie was surprised. What kind of stats did he have? Was he really cheating? Kitten trembled with fear. In her eyes, he was a veritable god of death. Tabby called out to Cookie and told him to use a skill and delay him, while Kitten should get away and use items. The two of them rushed to attack, while Tabby nervously gritted his teeth and thought that the first thing he did was eliminate Cake at maximum speed, whom he had already encountered, instantly depriving them of a frontline tank. Then, he immediately identified the puny mage's weak point and neutralized their main magical damage. He almost instantly destroyed their numerical advantage. This guy is much more dangerous than he thought. Cookie used a skill and disappeared from sight. MC immediately looked for him and wondered if this was an invisibility skill. Cookie was already behind him. He thought that no matter how high his speed, he couldn't block a blow he couldn't see. In the state of Shadow Onslaught, his attack and agility are increased by 30%. He pounced on him from behind and for some reason shouted, "Die," thereby giving himself away. Liu immediately turned around and struck, smirking as he said he'd tricked him. His pathetic tricks were completely useless against his eye of insight. Cookie only now realized he'd deliberately lured him into attacking, for which he paid with his death. After that, Liu saw a flash behind him. Kitten fired a fire arrow at him. Luckily, he managed to dodge, otherwise the explosion would have torn him apart. He wondered where Kitten was getting such insane damage from. If she hit, he'd be done for. He noticed her bow disappear immediately after the shot and wondered if it was a one-time use weapon. Kitten remarked that he was quite fast. However, she didn't expect to finish him off with one shot. She prepared this hidden item especially for him, a golden bow worth 100,000 star coins. So they'll have a lot of fun. Just let him think before he dodges next time. MC cursed. The girls who were supposed to leave were somehow still here, and if he dodged, Yan and the others would be caught in the blast. Kitten fired, he froze in place, and she exclaimed that he would finally die by her hand. She would become a living legend in this game. The arrow hit him and exploded, dealing 10,000 damage, which made his sister worry. Kitten was already overjoyed at her victory and wondered what he would drop for her, at least the dagger that occupied the first place in the rankings. But Liu somehow survived that attack and was now behind her. He struck and said that, since she needed that dagger so badly, he would grant her wish. Kitten screamed that it couldn't be, but Liu simply smiled and realized he hadn't expected that the first time he summoned the lightning shadow, it would serve as a living shield, as expected of him. Even the hidden artifact couldn't finish him off. When Liu turned around, he saw that his sister was in danger, and the captain was holding her in his arms. She screamed at him, "Brother, he shouldn't pay attention to her. She can be revived after death, so he shouldn't even think of surrendering to this cat. He shouted that he was actually Tabby, then laughed and asked, "Revived? The physical mixture reversible from mental trauma will remain with her forever." He grabbed her by the neck, and at that moment Luz screamed, "How dare he?" Tabby exclaimed that his enhancement had probably already worn off. He shouldn't do anything stupid, otherwise his immobilization spell would fly straight at his sister, and it would only play into his hands. Didn't he know that the level of realism and tactile sensations in this game reaches 99%? Lou shouted that he understood. He wanted the treasure map, right? He would give it to him, but he was told not to touch it. The captain replied that he had changed his mind and now wanted him to serve his squad as a slave for a whole year. Liu gritted his teeth in anger, and at that moment, Jasmine intervened, shouting, "Red Rose, Yan is in their guild. Are they really going to just stand by and watch her be held hostage?" But at that moment, someone behind them exclaimed, "Let them not dare interfere." It was Mistress Rose, level 16, who explained that these were personal issues between the 12th squad and Liu. They had nothing to do with their guild and were only a small association, so no one should get into trouble. Jasmine blurted out, "But Yan, kidnapped by the 12th squad commander, is their new member." But Rose replied, "Isn't she Liu's younger sister? After all, it's a family matter." The girls tried to resist her order while Liu asked what exactly he should do. Tabby replied that he would give him the address and that he had 8 hours to personally report to the 12th Division headquarters with his gaming equipment. He shouldn't even think about messing with him or trying to force his sister offline, unless she decided to quit the game for good. Otherwise, the next time she logged in, she'd find herself completely naked right at the main gate of the central city for everyone to see. Yan screamed at him for being a vile, mangy cat, and he screamed at her again that he was Tabby. Liu cursed, "What a freak." But his body simply wasn't capable of such a thing. And at that moment, he heard someone shout, "Who dares attack his older brother's sister?" Dong arrived, hit the captain from above, and threw him aside. Tabby asked who this trash was trying to stop him. When Dong turned around, Liu picked Yan up in his arms and shouted at him to hang on. His sister was safe and he shouldn't worry. Tabby screamed, "Where did this little thing come from? How dare they interfere with the 12th Division's plans? Let the melody become chains and take this flesh, and the song of captivity will sound." At that moment, Liu cried out, "Mangy cat, it's time to settle the score." He kneed the creature in the face, and the guys supported him, shouting that his sister was safe and that he shouldn't worry. They wished him luck and told him to unwrap this captain. Yan was also happy for him and supported him from a distance. Liu replied that although he didn't know who they were, he thanked them very much. The guys were surprised because they had actually appeared before. Had he forgotten them? The freak shouted. He already said his name was Tabby. He thought they could come to an agreement peacefully, but apparently a fight was inevitable. Liu asked, "Is this so-called peace agreement threatening his family for his joining them?" At that moment, the system reported that the starry breath effect had been restored, agility had been increased by 50, the Song of the War God effect had been restored, and attack had been increased by 100%. The captain drank the potion and declared that he didn't care about methods as long as they produced results. He valued only efficiency and finality, threats or powers, rare artifacts, or hidden classes. He didn't care as long as they weren't useful. His hidden class was the very reason he'd searched the entire Batcave in hopes of finding it. Ironically, he'd been assigned a different class, but this one was far more savage and cruel. When Liu heard this, he was greatly surprised, and Tabby continued shouting that if he couldn't force him to serve him, his only option was to destroy him. Liu realized he was behaving exactly like a wild animal. Was he really still a player? The captain rushed at him from behind, surprising Liu and causing him to spin around abruptly. Tabby screamed as he took over 100 damage in his berserker form for the first time. MC was shocked. This is incredible defense speed. How can this guy be so strong? He needs to choose the right moment, immobilize him, and hit him where he's weak. Tabby screamed, "Why are you frozen there?" He rushed toward him again and he screamed, "Let the melody be what transforms this flesh," an immobilizing chord. Tabby's stunned eyes widened, and at that moment he attempted to strike Liu. He jumped aside and struck with incredible force. Everyone was afraid for him, and the captain said that in berserker form he was immune to all debuffs. Isn't that funny, Liu? His class was simply made to destroy him. Liu chuckled and said, "He's right, it's really funny." He'd always heard about the celestial connection from his mentor, but he never could understand what it was. For him, any difficulty presents new opportunities, and even the most hopeless impasse can be resolved. That must be exactly what she meant, mentor. At that moment, magical forces appeared around him, and he abruptly rushed toward Tabby, who couldn't understand how this was possible. After a while, he chopped the creature into several pieces, and the bloody captain muttered that it was a curse. He became very angry and grabbed Liu's hand in his teeth, but he suddenly moved and asked where he was looking. Tabby didn't understand. Was it a doppelganger? How many more trump cards was he hiding? Liu hit the captain on the head, and he fell to the ground. The protagonist said that, although his methods were dirty, his strength in battle truly deserved respect. 100 gold or 1 million copper coins is insanely expensive. Of course, this is Mentor Angela's recipe. Next time he'll definitely try making this potion. He needs to collect the loot the others dropped. The 12th squad is so rich, and they're sure to have a ton of valuable junk. This is Captain Cat's hidden item after all, and 2 more pieces of silver-ranked equipment. He collected a full set of Waning Moon, and his strength instantly increased. Yan, delighted, said he was incredibly cool, and Liu hugged her and asked if she was really scared. He apologized to her. Yan hugged him and replied, not at all. She knew her brother would definitely teach this mangy cat a lesson. The other girls approached her and asked if she was okay. She replied that everything was fine. Red Rose approached Liu and told him that Yan was from their team, and that they were supposed to help him just now. He replied that he shouldn't worry about it. He'd already gotten excellent loot from them, and if they'd gotten in the way, he wouldn't have known how to divide it. At that moment, Rose intervened, saying exactly that. Besides, they distracted the 12th squad, creating excellent fighting conditions for him. So the equipment he'd taken from the 12th squad should be considered a gift from the guild for their first meeting. Liu thanked her for it and thought, this is their squad leader. Her behavior is completely different from Red Rose's. She's already level 16, and even without changing classes, she shouldn't be underestimated. At that moment, Rose announced that Yan was leaving with them, and she responded positively. Yan waved to her brother and said that in that case, she was leaving. They'd discuss everything when they logged out, and she'd come to his room. Liu was lost in thought as this girl appeared and disappeared like the wind, as usual. At that moment, someone called Liu's name, and he realized he'd almost forgotten about those 2. They were the guys who had helped him, and suddenly they fell at his feet and began sobbing. Liu asked fearfully, what are they doing? They began begging him to take them as assistants, and they wouldn't get up until he agreed. Rose turned around, saw this, and was surprised. If her memory served her right, the fat man named Dong was the grandson of the garrison commander of the new district, and the thin one named Lu was the son of the president of Star Express. Both were children of very influential people in the family district. She had once even offered them special privileges as an exception and sent 2 guys on a team, but they flatly refused. And now they were ready to grovel before some lone wolf and call him boss. She wished she hadn't seen it. At that moment, Dong asked what his plans were for the near future. Liu reflected that he had originally planned to search for treasure using the Whiteface clan's map, but he had just checked again and still had no clues. Liu mentioned that the game's first team trial, the Abode of Silence, had opened an hour ago in the main city's dungeon. He was surprised. Was this a team dungeon? Liu replied that people were saying that the Zongyang clan and the Bloodblade clan had already led their men there, so they should go too. Dong confirmed that indeed, only the first 25 people to complete the Abode of Silence, the game's first team dungeon, would receive a reward. The rewards there were probably insane, so now everyone was scrambling to be the first to complete it. The protagonist thought that this sounded quite tempting. Since the treasure map couldn't be opened yet, why not look at the dungeon's rewards first, and return to the search when new clues appeared? When they went to the main city, Dong asked him to wait, and Liu informed him that a pass was required to enter, and according to his information, these passes could be obtained in the swamps of the Misty Mountains. Liu asked if this information was accurate. He told him not to worry, since he paid a whopping 100,000 star coins for this information, so it was absolutely reliable. Liu was surprised. He paid 100,000 just for this clue. Dong laughed and said he didn't need to worry about his wallet, since the Liu family was in the logistics business, and the huge real-world company, Star Express, belonged to them. Liu, stunned, asked again, Star Express? Order on Earth has long since collapsed, so establishing cargo delivery channels is incredibly difficult now. And the fact that Star Express managed to rise so quickly under these conditions speaks to their colossal influence. Even the gaming helmet Xiaoxian gave him was delivered by this company. To fake it was the Liu family's business. He smiled. That's right, his superpower is his money. Liu thought for some reason this was starting to irritate him, then turned to Dong and asked, what about him? His expression seemed to suggest he should ask immediately. Dong replied that his grandfather was the commander of the new region's military district, and if he needed anything there, he would immediately resolve any issue. Liu asked why such a wealthy heir as themselves would ally with him. Couldn't they simply hire people for money, like the 12th Squad or the Zongheng clan? Liu replied that they had only just started playing the game to become independent of their families and achieve everything on their own. Liu wondered how he could explain his expensive equipment and the purchase of information for 100,000 star coins. Dong shouted that it was indeed so, and besides, everyone was afraid of a large guild. Their previous allies were constantly bullied by powerful clans and eventually disbanded. But he, the boss, was completely different. He'd single-handedly challenged a huge guild and even wiped out the strongest squad of 12. At that moment, they shouted that they were ready to follow him to the death, and Liu said things were getting heated, so he suggested cutting out all the unnecessary pathos. He usually preferred to act alone, but since they'd helped him today, he'd make an exception and go with them to the dungeon, but after that, they'd part ways, okay? The guys shouted at him to please not abandon them, and after a while, they arrived at the swamp. Liu assumed this was the place. There were a lot of level 16 dark goblins around. They needed to be careful, and Dong said that with such stats, they wouldn't have it easy. He was afraid he'd only be able to deal one mandatory damage to them. Liu replied that since they were going to fight together, they should tell him about their classes. Liu said he'd chosen the Paladin class, a support class, and he currently only had one skill available. Liu asked again, instant healing? That skill alone was more than enough. Dong explained that he was a shield bearer and had excellent defense, currently standing at almost 150. The protagonist replied that this was excellent, a good tank for the front lines. At that moment, someone approached them and called out, "Guys!" It was Malu, a warrior apprentice, who began shouting angrily, "Don't they know this is their Zongheng clan's territory? Let them get out of here." Karina, standing next to him, said they were completely out of their minds to dare come to their clan's territory. Liu smiled and replied that, since there were clan members on duty here, they must have found the right place. Karina asked, "Isn't he being too cocky? Let Malu chase him away quickly." Malu became very angry, then suddenly realized something and froze, his mouth hanging open in shock. Karina asked, "What happened?" But at that moment, Liu abruptly destroyed him and declared that it was him. Karina was terrified and cried out in horror. Liu explained that there was no one else here and that all these resources now belonged solely to them. Liu replied that they needed to hurry and that the guy had probably already reported what was happening to the rulers of the world, so they needed to end it quickly. Dong asked how they could find out where the pass was hidden. Liu replied that they would kill them all and then find out. Suddenly, he stopped and said, "Let the melody become the lock binding this body." After this spell, all the goblins began to glow with a bright magical light, and Liu suddenly leaped into the air and began destroying one monster after another. When he completed his task, he thought that if he first used the skills from the potion and then activated Lightning Shadow, the clone would inherit 60% of his current stats, and the attack chain would be much better. But it would be nice to have a clone with even more damage. Liu said the boss's clone dealt more damage than he did. He had never felt so useless in this game. He told him not to even mention it, because before he could even reach the front lines, the boss had already mowed down everyone, and they had 8,000 health each. He turned to Liu and asked if he thought anyone in this game was stronger than the boss. He replied that it was unlikely, but the boss didn't care, and he cared little about being the strongest. Being the strongest without bragging about it is one of the reasons he admires him so much. Liu confirmed that the longer they were together, the more clearly he realized they made the right choice. Dong suggested they come to an agreement right away, since he'd met the boss first, so if the group expanded, he'd be second and he'd be third. Liu exclaimed, "What the hell? They were sworn brothers, and he was plotting behind his back?" If that was the case, then he suggested they settle things with a duel first. Dong shouted yes, but he shouldn't cry when he had to deal with his equipment after defeat. Liu exclaimed that he'd been waiting for just that, and at that moment, the system announced a worldwide announcement congratulating player Fenguo on achieving the first solo kill of elite dark goblins. When the guys heard the name, they were very surprised, and Liu said that it seemed this wasn't the only dark goblin zone, and that someone else was doing the same thing as them, but in a different location. But who was this guy anyway? And where did he come from? Was he really that strong? Dong replied that this guy was most likely the owner of the Juhuo Credit Company. The protagonist asked again, does he even know his real name and place of work? Dong said he hadn't specifically inquired about this. It was just that this man had a bad reputation in many other games. People were saying he was pouring tons of real money earned from brutally extorting debts in real life and didn't even hide his identity in game. Liu exclaimed, looking into the world chat, where discussions about Liu had begun. What kind of people are these? Always needing to acquire a boss here? Dong yelled at him not to take these words to heart. If he had met him first, he would have definitely taken this achievement for himself. Liu smiled and replied that he wasn't worried about it, more concerned that they had killed all the dark goblins in the area but still hadn't found the pass. Liu wondered if they were all destroyed. Then why had this weapon disappeared along with them? Liu suddenly picked up the weapon, and he thought it really didn't look like the usual equipment dropped by monsters. The system reported it as a goblin battle axe, intended for the Abode of Silence pass, and it couldn't be equipped. He realized what it was, and said Liu was a genius. Those goblin axes were the passes. How come he didn't notice it right away? Dong exclaimed to the boss that they needed to get them out quickly, as the axes were sinking into the swamp. After a while, the guys collected all the axes and said it was too realistic. The objects were so wet and disgusting to the touch. Liu got 11, and how many did he have? Dong replied that he'd collected 10. It was a great haul, and now they had the passes, but why did it suddenly get dark? Suddenly, an incredibly huge goblin appeared right next to them and attacked them with a weapon. They screamed loudly in fear and frozen terror, but suddenly, Dong pulled out his shield and began fighting the goblin, while Liu ran to the boss, screaming for him to save them. Liu asked, "Rare monster, where is it?" Dong continued to fight the creature, asking the scarecrow how dare it underestimate its grandfather. Dong let it have his shield. He rammed the monster, but suddenly found himself behind the creature and asked in fear, "Where the hell did it go?" Liu shouted at it that it was behind him, Let the melody become a lock and take his flesh. The melody of numbness must sound. At that moment, the monster glowed with magical light, and Liu asked, does it want to compete with him in speed? A moment later, blood began to spurt from the monster's mouth, and the system reported a world announcement, congratulating player Liu on his first kill of the rare monster, the Dark Goblin. He managed to level up, and suddenly the guys ran up to him again, grabbing his legs and shouting that another second and Dong would have been beaten to death. Liu begged them to let him go first so he could look at the rewards. Liu begged him not to stray so far from them again. The system reported that he now had a unique goblin treasure map, as well as a hidden item, the Wind God's Crossbow. The items included a gold-ranked cursed necklace, a cursed ring, and a dark light battle shield. The guys were surprised that it was gold-ranked equipment, and Liu confirmed that it was no coincidence that it was a rare monster. The reward was incredibly generous. Liu reported that Dong could hold the dark light battle shield, and Dong replied that he couldn't take it since he'd earned it himself. The protagonist smiled and replied that, since they weren't in the same party, they needed to develop together, and besides, he didn't need shields anyway. Dong was overjoyed and shouted that he now also had gold equipment, and one with super powerful camouflage skills. Liu was surprised and asked if it was an honor to even be third in the weapon rankings, and Dong asked again, really? Wow, it was only 2 places behind his fallen dagger, and second place had such a high attack power. It seemed the rankings were based on stats and additional skills. Liu became very sad and started crying, but Liu smiled and said he knew there was something for him too. He handed him the Wind God's Crossbow, a hidden item, and Liu was overjoyed and shouted, will he really give it to him? Liu replied that he was a smart guy, and that this hidden item was a one-time use, and he believed it would be of real use in his hands. Dong shouted that the hidden item was worth a whopping 22,000 pure damage. But what did he know about that? He should just give it to him. Liu got angry and shouted, no, because Liu had given it to him, and he already had a cool shield. The protagonist said they could now look at his new equipment, a cursed necklace and a cursed ring. He transferred the flash skill from his old elite necklace to this cursed one, so he now has 2 full flash charges, and with the ring, which provides an extra 50 luck, the passive fall effect will trigger much more often. And here's a treasure map. Unlike the one belonging to the Whiteface clan, this one has precise coordinates. The Lost Apothecary Garden, although he doesn't know the exact location of these coordinates, he'll definitely look for clues later. Suddenly, Dong shouted that people were spreading vile rumors about him in the world chat, which surprised Liu. They wrote that Fengwo had just defeated a monster, and Liu immediately took a rare one. So, those Zhuo mongrels bit their tongues? Who the hell is this Liu? Some no-name, even daring to compare himself to the Fengwo guildmaster. And the boss had brought this rare monster to the brink of death, while Liu had simply tricked him, using a hidden item. Dong, enraged, shouted, what a blatant lie, and they're even posting this in the global chat. Why is Fengwo himself silent and not explaining anything? He saw the following comments and shouted, are they kidding me? What shameless jerks are this team? After all, their friend had defeated this rare monster single-handedly. How could they even do something like that? Liu didn't understand either, but he told Dong to calm down. Attacking the now insanely popular Liu was the easiest way to instantly attract public attention. For them, that honestly didn't matter. All that mattered was the profit from this PR game. At that moment, someone called Liu's system, and he was surprised to see an immortal standing before him. Immortal greeted him and congratulated him on his first rare monster kill. Had he really done it solo again? Liu smiled and asked him to get to the point, after which Immortal said that he would then be completely frank. Did he manage to get passes to the Abode of Silence dungeon? Liu answered yes. He had 25 of them. At this point, the guys got angry and shouted that this was classified information, and Immortal, laughing, said that he expected nothing less from him. How about meeting at the coffee shop in the main city and discuss cooperation? Liu replied that he would be there soon, which greatly upset the guys. Dong said that the Immortal clan had a good reputation, but wasn't he acting too recklessly? Liu confirmed this. Had he already forgotten how the 12th squad and the freaks treated free players like them? Liu smiled at the squad, saying that the 2 of them had better ideas on how to use the 25 passes, but they answered no, and Liu asked them to trust him. After all, they themselves had just called him their senior. Dong smiled and shouted that he'd finally accepted his status as their sworn brother, so there was nothing to talk about, and they trusted him completely. After a while, they arrived at the main city's coffee shop. An immortal Cloth greeted them, shouting that they could finally form a team again. She was so loud that Shen Xian grabbed her in his arms and yelled at her to be more modest and think about the Immortal clan's reputation. She shouted that it was none of his business, that he was simply jealous of her excellent relationship with the expert. At that moment, Dong and Liu gazed lovingly at the Immortal Cloth. At that moment, Shen Xian shouted that he'd heard everything and that they should stop drooling over the Immortal clan members. Otherwise, he'd quickly give them a beating. Liu shouted, who's afraid of him? It was their boss begging their big brother to come. If he didn't like it, then he'd offer to fight. At that moment, Liu hit each of them on the head, causing an awkward silence between them. Immortal joined them at that moment, delighted to see them again, and Liu smiled and offered to sit down and discuss everything. Dong was surprised. He was the same class as the 12th squad leader, and Liu asked, why didn't his head turn into a beast's head? It looked so cool. Immortal said he'd heard he had 25 dungeon passes, and his offer, 3 million star coins, was to buy out 15 first stage reward slots from him. The guys were very surprised. 3 million star coins? Such a huge sum? Dong asked again. He hadn't misheard, had he? The Immortal clan was offering 3 million star coins for 15 first stage rewards? Lu said there were rumors that one Immortal was incredibly generous, and it seemed to be true. Immortal Cloth reported that their boss meant that most players were still stuck in the Bat Cave, and only a few had obtained dungeon passes. Even so, no one had yet managed to clear it, proving its incredible difficulty. Immortal was right. They had 25 passes, and those alone were already incredibly valuable. But it seemed that even if they took 15 of them, they would likely just waste them. Shenshin asked why he was being so blunt about it. He and the Immortal clan made them look weak. Immortal laughed and said that it was true. So there was no point in hiding anything in front of an expert. Among the 1 million players, there would only be 25 first completion rewards, and one could only imagine how generous they would be. In other words, 15 first completion rewards would guarantee them 15 high-end items and equipment. Their company carefully considered everything before making this offer. Liu reflected that he'd heard that the Zongheng clan had also failed, so their skills could be put aside for now. He knew full well what the Bloodblade was capable of, and even if he'd lost, this dungeon truly posed a serious threat. He agreed to their terms, but first he had to personally go into the dungeon and scout everything out. Dong shouted that they would go too, and Lu replied that he was sure there were plenty of passes anyway, so he suggested they go together. The entrance to the dungeon was a sanctuary of silence. Many people had gathered around it and decided it seemed like they needed to go there. Lu surveyed the surroundings and said he clearly remembered that this used to be a wasteland. When did they manage to create such a huge palace? Liu asked to go inside, and the system announced a pass check, which they passed, and teleportation to the dungeon, the abode of silence, in 3 seconds. Lu didn't think the goblin's weapon would automatically turn into a pass the moment they got close. Dong called him an idiot and said they could be overheard. When they went inside, the guys were discussing how they thought they were just there to have a look. They should have gone straight to them and asked about this. Were they really still selling passes? When they entered the abode of silence, they looked around, and Dong said the scale was enormous. Lu confirmed that they could open an entire corporation there. Liu turned to them and apologized for agreeing to the Immortal clan's terms without consulting them. Dong asked fearfully, what was he talking about? In such matters, he always had the final say. Liu confirmed that they had said right away that they just wanted to play with him, and weren't interested in anyone else. After all, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouths, so they already have everything. They're just here for the thrill. Liu said how annoying it was, and Dong said that if he was really embarrassed, the boss should just appoint him as his deputy. Liu shouted, so he knows how to seize the moment? He should ask him first before aiming for the deputy boss. Liu replied, okay. They need to go to the dungeon first and then argue about it. When they arrived, they looked around. There was a statue of a maiden, and this was the dungeon boss. They were surprised. Is that all? Dong said. Boss, let him just stand aside and rest. He'll quickly deal with this. Suddenly, he flew far to the side, and Liu was afraid for him. Liu realized that she had taken him out with one blow, even though he had the highest health and defense. The statue's eyes glowed bright red, and the surrounding area was illuminated by its green magical power. Liu realized its attack power was a whopping 3,000, which greatly frightened him. Liu shouted at Liu to watch out, but he too was attacked. This frightened the protagonist, and exclaimed that it was a curse. The creature's attack speed was simply terrifying. He used a potion of swiftness and giant. Like the stars in the breath, he gained the power of the building light, rushing forward along the stellar orbit. In the name of the brave, he sang the song of the god of war, and may it give him the strength to break the enemy line. When he activated the spell, he shouted for the statue to die, but a moment later he missed and, descending to the ground, exclaimed that this could not be. The stone statue turned to him, and he shouted that its defense was a whopping 1,000. He had no choice but to use it. A moment later, he blew up the statue and suddenly looked ahead, stunned. He was dumbfounded and didn't understand what was happening. His heart seemed to sink for a moment. Was it really over? At that moment, the statue created several more stone statues around itself, completely surrounding Liu. Was he really going to die here? When Dong found himself outside, he asked why Liu wasn't there yet. Liu said that the fact that he hadn't come out yet was a good sign. Maybe he'd managed to clear this dungeon. Suddenly, a group of invincibles approached them. Heavens blurted out that he thought Liu was so cool, but he'd merely stolen someone else's rare monster and sneaked into the dungeon. Dong started arguing and shouted that he hadn't stolen anyone's rare monster and that it was all just dirty lies from the Zhuhuo freaks. Liu asked him not to get angry, as there was nothing to explain. One of them, Fengguo, asked, does he mean to say he's spreading rumors? The people around started shouting, isn't that the great Fengguo? Has he also come to the dungeon? Those two loners will be in trouble. After all, they're rumored to be Liu's lackeys. Heavens turned to Fengguo and said that he knew this Liu better than anyone. All he knew was how to do was sneakily do bad things. Using his filthy hands, he stole a ton of goods from their clan. Fengguo smiled and said precisely that he'd worked so hard to bring that rare creature to the brink of death to claim his first kill, and he stole it. It's time for them to settle the score with him. Just think, that's how Liu claimed his first kill. How shameless he is. Everyone started shouting such terrible words, and Liu asked Dong not to worry and told the others to just say what they wanted from them. Fenghuo replied that he wasn't going to talk to the guard dog. He should advise his master. Liu replied that he was still in the dungeon, and if he wanted to talk, he should talk to him. Bird laughed and said that he probably had the soul beaten out of him, but he still dreamed of completing the dungeon. Heavens said he had a proposition. Those two probably had a lot of entrance tickets left, so he proposed forcing them to give them everything. The surrounding guys shouted that it was right. They needed to be driven out of here and given the tickets. Liu laughed loudly, and Dong asked what was going on. The surrounding people asked if this guy had gone crazy. He must have cracked under the pressure. Liu shouted that they were a bunch of pathetic losers who could only use what was in the safe zone. After all, they weren't capable of getting tickets themselves, so they came here to beg for them with shameless faces. When Heavens and Fenghuo heard this, they became very angry and asked what he just said. Liu started pointing his fingers at them and shouting that he was giving him 1 minute to explain what skills that rare monster he'd supposedly almost finished off possessed and what weapon it had used. Fenghuo's face was slick, and he couldn't utter a word, causing Liu to continue shouting that he couldn't even say that. They were a bunch of scum, spending their days trying to defame his friend. Let them come up with something more interesting. Fenghuo exclaimed that they were scumbags. If they had any dignity, they should tell their names and settle this in real life. Liu asked again. In real life, he was afraid he wouldn't even have a chance to meet him face to face. Dong replied that his words hurt more than any magic spell and that he was simply a handsome man. Liu whispered that he should keep quiet, because if reinforcements didn't arrive soon, he would definitely collapse. Fenghuo shouted, "Okay, great. Does he think that because they're in a safe zone, he can't do anything to him? They have entrance tickets, so they should drag them into the dungeon and he'll beat him to death right there." At that moment, someone shouted for everyone to stop, and they turned around. It turned out to be Immortal and his team, who declared that they had already purchased the tickets for these two guys. Heavens asked, "Immortal clan?" He said that if someone went ahead, they would have to fight. Heavens shouted, "Immortal alone? Is he really ready to go against alliances for a bunch of loners?" Bird shouted the boss. "The rewards for the first run are only 25, and most players haven't even gotten tickets yet. 3 large alliances should even team up to clear the dungeons. If the alliance has the greatest strength and can provide fighting courage, their alliance can also provide information about the dungeon, and the Immortal clan can provide tickets. Splitting the tickets for these lone warriors among their 3 allies would be the best solution." Immortal Cloth said that this was unnecessary, and the Immortal clan had already entered into a cooperation agreement with Liu. He would help them collect 15 rewards for clearing the dungeon. At this point, Tree even burst into tears of laughter and shouted, "Immortal clan, have they completely lost their minds? Do they even know how outrageous the stats of this dungeon boss are?" Heavens asked, "Okay, so be it. He'll share the information with them for free. Have they ever seen a monster with 10,000 health and 1,000 defense? They shouldn't think they could take it down with a crowd, because each attack doubles the monster's damage and defense." When the guys heard this, they became frightened, and Heavens continued to say that even if they all went in there as a crowd, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from this creature. They'd just be wasting their tickets. Shenqian screamed, "Is this really true? Even an expert is powerless over this?" Bird wondered if they would really hand over this valuable information so easily. Heavens replied, "No problem. Let them take off their rose-colored glasses and stop pinning their hopes on some pathetic lone thief." Fenghuo said that even though Liu had stolen his first rare monster kill, he wouldn't bring up the past. He'd buy each ticket for 10,000 star coins and take as many as they had. Trash wouldn't need them anyway. At that moment, the system announced to the world, congratulating Liu on his first clear of the Abode of Silence dungeon in the world. Liu asked, "Why is it they don't need them?" When Liu soloed the stone statue, everyone was stunned, and only Immortal rejoiced for him. People began shouting that he'd cleared the dungeon and was simply a god. Dong shouted that he'd cleared the dungeon for the first time, and Liu confirmed that he'd known he'd succeed. Immortal said he had no doubt in him, and Immortal Cloth shouted that he was incredibly tough. Shenqian exclaimed that he'd been seriously scared after hearing their tales. At that moment, the opposing clan became angry, and Dong blurted out that Fenghuo, after all, had said that his friend had stolen his first rare monster kill. Did he really almost finish off this dungeon boss, and his friend just dealt the finishing blow? Immortal Cloth said that his words weren't entirely accurate. He even had to beg for dungeon tickets, so how could he have possibly beaten the boss? Fenghuo got angry and shouted, "What did she just say?" The guys continued, saying that if Liu was capable of clearing dungeons alone, why would he steal someone else's rare monsters? During this first rare monster kill, they were in different locations. What audacity to slander a man so shamelessly. Everyone condemned Fenghuo, who had ordered his squad to leave. Heavens was surprised and watched him go. Dong and Liu happily waved at him and told him to come back when he had saved up for tickets. Fenghuo suggested contacting the boss, asking him to use harsher debt collection methods in the real world. They needed to repay the funds urgently. In the game, they should focus all their efforts on buying gold equipment. At that moment, A multitude of guys ran up to Liu, shouting that they would pay him 30 gold coins and let him take them with him to the dungeon. Liu apologized and said he already had an agreement with the Immortal clan. Maybe he could help them some other time. At that moment, he turned to the Immortal and told them to go inside. Immortal responded perfectly. There were 7 of them this time, and if that's the case, they'd have to bother the expert to lead another group. He replied that it was no problem, and the guys looked into the distance, realizing they'd entered. Had they all really gotten a reward for their first clear? How he envied them. The Immortal clan was very lucky, and he'd also like to get his hands on a boss like that. It was definitely better than angering him. Just look at the guys' faces. They're simply pitch black. Heavens had originally planned to team up with Juhuo to force Liu to hand over the tickets and, at the same time, attract the loners and expand their influence. But because of that jerk, he was demoted and his salary was cut at the company. How long would he stand in his way? While he was fuming, the guys entered the dungeon again, and Dong remarked how he'd even managed to defeat that stone statue. It had knocked him back, and that thing's stats were simply outrageous. Shenxian confirmed yes, and word from outside was that this boss was incredibly strong. Liu replied that he couldn't have handled it in a normal fight. The situation was critical, so he had to use the golden bow he received from the 12th squad to instantly kill it. But immediately after, more statues appeared. At that moment, he was simply stunned and couldn't think of anything, and he no longer had any hidden items. But the strangest thing was that while he stood motionless, the statues didn't move either. Shenxian asked again, but why? Liu asked again. Did he remember the name of this dungeon? At that moment, the guys realized it was an abode of silence and shouted, "That's what it meant." Liu answered, "That's right. The key to passing this dungeon is to remain silent and instantly destroy the 3 stone statues. If you don't kill them instantly or make any sound, the statues will cast a bunch of buffs on him, and then even he won't be able to do anything." Immortal Cloth replied that it was no wonder people from other clans couldn't get past it. The more people there are, the more noise there is. Immortal laughed and said, "An instant kill. Such madness, only their master can do." The party thought they'd forgotten something. Then he logged into the wild monster chat. It had become deserted lately, and there was almost no news from the dungeon. So he had to ask a question on behalf of the monster to confirm his guess. He realized it was a boost without preparation. After all, an advanced version of a bard skill. And how much time were they trying to gain? Were the monsters planning something big soon? He quickly logged offline, but his guess was completely confirmed. Dong asked, "What's the reward for the first kill?" He replied that it was a secret. If he was so interested, he'd find out for himself when he received the reward. The Immortal Cloth whispered to him that he was in a great mood and that the reward really was amazing. Liu reflected on how he'd had to use 3 skills and 2 enhancement potions to guarantee an instant kill, but the rewards exceeded all expectations. He received a scroll with an average skill for his class, a skill level up scroll, and an item with unknown properties. The text appears to be a garbled text. Average rank, apprentice, experience, 0 out of 20,000. Mana consumption, 40, cooldown 10 seconds. And at that moment, a strong wind appeared in the room. Immortal wondered if this was the boss, the abode of silence. The Immortal Cloth murmured how beautiful she was, but Dong covered her mouth and whispered to be quiet. Liu smiled and greeted her again, then whispered the breath of the Thunder God, the curse-embodying song. May her suffering be doubled. Immortal was dumbfounded when he realized that this was over 700 points in exactly 1 hit, and that was with a defense status of 50. Are they really playing the same game? Why are these two so proud? At that moment, all the statues began to glow with a bright flame, and Liu looked confidently ahead. They remained silent as the battle continued. Meanwhile, Blade shouted, "He definitely used a hidden item. There's no other explanation." Heavens explained that it was true. They'd entered this dungeon 5 times and only once managed to destroy the first statue with a hidden item. But such items are incredibly rare, fetching around 1 million star coins on the black market for 1%. It's not worth the effort. He used such valuable hidden items and they thought victory was assured. But 3 more, even more terrifying statues appeared immediately after the first. Judging by the stats and attack power of these 3 statues, it's simply impossible to complete this dungeon alone. Accepting Bloodblade into the guild was already a huge achievement, but this guy hasn't achieved anything since. This dungeon was his last chance. Heaven said that ultimately, completing this dungeon depended solely on the rare items and the team's financial resources. Bird confirmed that he was absolutely right. "Boss, if 1 statue requires 1 rare item, then the cost of purchasing 4 such items could bankrupt even a small guild." As far as he knew, Liu used to sell junk on the street and simply didn't have that kind of money. Even if he miraculously obtained a couple of hidden items, they would eventually run out. The fact that he came from the Immortal clan was purely by chance, and their presence forced him to act against common sense. He said that this was excellent analysis. It looked like the Immortal clan would be screwed this time, and they would buy their tickets for next to nothing. At that moment, a global announcement was made, congratulating players Liu, Dong, 1 Immortal, Shenxian, and Immortal Cloth on the world's first completion of the Abode of Silence dungeon. At that moment, Heavens was dumbfounded and started shouting, "What? Is this really true?" Shenxian shouted, "What a catch! What a fantastic reward for the first time." Dong asked, "How so?" He said they wouldn't be lost with their expert. Immortal Cloth asked again, Why is he so cocky? When they first started working with the master, he wasn't even there. Discussing everything that was happening, they exited the dungeon joyfully. The people around them started shouting what they'd been rewarded with. The guys replied that they'd received 2 gold-ranked items, a super powerful skill scroll, all thanks to the expert. Immortal Cloth turned to him and asked what his reward was this time. Liu replied that it was his second time through, so there was no reward, but he still received a few dozen gold coins, so he wasn't particularly offended. Heavens was dumbfounded and declared that he was a damn braggart. Immortal approached the cloth and ordered the other Immortal clan leaders to urgently contact them, telling them to quickly go to the dungeon. They still had 8 empty slots. She responded, "Okay, boss." And at that moment, Heavens shouted at Bird. "He told me his rare consumables would run out. Didn't he say he just went there on a whim?" Bird couldn't respond and trembled with fear, while Heavens continued to shout that if he was kicked out of the company, the first thing he would do was take him with him. Bird tried to suggest they had another option, then whispered this to him, and Heavens smiled and said, "Fine, let him do it right now." After a while, Liu received a call saying that Yan's things had been taken. He shouted, "What exactly? Let her tell you more." Zhang replied that he had given her a hidden class token earlier. Today at school, she told him that their guild leader, Ms. Rose, had taken the token. She was afraid he would get angry, so she was afraid to tell him, and has been crying alone in her room all this time. At that moment, Rose approached him and said they met again. Cherry, an elemental mage and apprentice, was standing next to her. Liu grew angry and said he understood everything, that he should focus on his studies for now, and he would handle this matter himself. Rose said she didn't expect him to actually take the first kill of the Abode of Silence. His defeat was well deserved. Liu said it was just in time, and he was looking for her too, so she should be frank about it. She simply replied that it was nothing special, it was just their little Yan. She was a member of their guild, and her level was too low, and her abilities were unremarkable. Leveling her up had become a real headache. Liu asked, what was she getting at? Cherry said that she had heard that the rewards for the first time through this dungeon were incredibly generous, and since he was Yan's brother, why didn't he take them there now and help them get some rewards? If they succeeded, they could get some gold items for Yan, and then leveling her up would be much easier. Liu asked, who was she? Cherry replied that she was the new vice leader of the guild, and he could call her by her first name. He asked, new vice leader? Immortal Cloth shouted that if they wanted an expert to drag them in, they should say so. Otherwise, they were hiding behind his little sister, and that was very low. Besides, he had to help them get their Immortal Clan rewards, so they had no chance here. Cherry asked again, where did this girl come from? Interrupting other people's conversations was very rude. Liu asked, is stealing other people's things without asking considered polite in their guild? She screamed, what does she mean? At that moment, the Immortal Cloth asked, Wind Sorcerer? Lady Rose smirked, and the Immortal Cloth screamed, how did she get her class token? Liu said that it was true. He gave the token to his younger sister, Yan, and besides, the guild members were present then too. The girls started shouting, did the leader take Yan's class token? That couldn't be true. How could the leader do such a thing? Could this really be about Red Rose and her squad? Cherry started screaming that it was a lie. The hidden class and leader token was a personal birthday gift from the 30th guild leader, and they were still spreading rumors here. How could they have no shame? Rose said the guild knew about it and offered to tell everyone who the token really was. Liu frowned, and Red Rose said she'd found it specifically for the guild leader, Quan Feng, from the Zhuhuo guild. Liu realized their levels had somehow dropped significantly and was surprised. She started screaming, asking if he could see that no one had even seen him give the token to her. He should quickly apologize to the leader. Rose asked him to forget about it, as she wasn't going to stir up a conflict over ordinary gameplay disagreements. They will simply think that he made a mistake. Now let him lead them to the dungeon. She wanted to personally select a few good items for Yan. Liu asked what would happen if he refused. Rose replied that then she would have to demand that she return all her equipment. Besides, during all this time they were helping her level up. Their guild had spent a lot of resources, and if you converted that into star coins, how much was it, Cherry? She replied that it was at least 1 million star coins. Liu shouted, what? Rose replied that if he tried to evade payment and became an enemy, then Yan would hardly have any place left for her to hide, so he should think carefully. It would be much more profitable for him to lead them through this dungeon. Immortal Cloth screamed, how vile she was. Immortal approached him and, shaking his shoulder, said that the rest of the group was already assembled, and they were only waiting for his word to go collect their reward for the first run. He whispered slightly different words in his ear, and Liu said that he understood everything and asked him to wait a little. Since they cared about Yan so much, he would have to lead them first. However, they would have to find the tickets themselves, as he didn't have enough for everyone. She replied that she wasn't going to remain in his debt and had a whole 10 tickets with her. Cherry said that he had agreed too easily, so she should be careful. What if it was a trap? Maybe she should hand out the tickets first? Rose asked if she was afraid she wouldn't take her with her. She should put aside her silly doubts, as she had everything under control. Liu, it would be bad if he broke the agreement with his clients for their sake. Why don't they go with the guys and the Immortal Clan? The more people, the merrier. Liu realized that she was genuinely cautious and said that he was afraid it was impossible to see. The dungeon had its own rules, If there were too many people, a hidden defense mechanism would be activated. He suggested a different approach, so as not to offend anyone. He would take a few people from each side, only 2 or 3 passes would be required, and he guaranteed that everyone would receive their rewards. At that moment, Liu Yutsu and Isho approached him, and Liu Yutsu said, "Respected senior, then she'll go first. Thank you all so much for the opportunity." Isho replied, "It doesn't matter, and let her go in already." The surrounding boys shouted, "This time they won't be able to go with her and protect her, so don't be afraid." Everyone wished her luck. Liu Yutsu turned to Isho and apologized for the trouble. She replied that she knew how annoying they were. Immortal announced that the first group would be Liu Yutsu and the immortal Isho, as well as Lady Rose and Cherry. As soon as they entered, they were to follow their master and obey his commands without question. The girls shouted that they were leaving, and their tickets were verified. Bird and Heavens watched the proceedings with smiles in their eyes. When the girls entered, Cherry asked, "So this is the dungeon?" Rose told her to keep a close eye on Liu and not give him any chance to pull any tricks. She told her not to worry, as Liu had never been killed in this game before. He definitely wouldn't joke around with his own life. Isho asked them to be quiet, as if they wanted to live, they should shut their mouths and not make a sound. Rose thought she was such an insolent tramp. Why did she suddenly decide to give orders? If it weren't for the reward for completing the dungeon, she would never have gotten involved with such a lowly organization as the Immortal Clan. Liu Yutsu apologized and whispered that their guildmate had a difficult personality, but she was saying it solely for the sake of success and their operation. She'd heard that all the girls in their guild were stunning beauties, and today she'd personally seen that it was true. She said that he was very sweet and much nicer than the anger he felt toward the shrew. She replied that this wasn't true at all, and when the guys entered the central hall, they saw the statue for the first time. Liu whispered that she was summoning the thunder god's breath and turning the curse into song. The pain would multiply 100-fold. At that moment, he struck the statue and destroyed it. Rose screamed, "Just one blow?" And they understood. A boat of silence, so that's what it meant. A moment later, the entire hall lit up with a bright light, and a magical seal appeared on the floor. Liu Yutsu covered her face and muttered, "So that's how it works." She started laughing and shouted, "The secret of this dungeon is to silently kill an enemy with one blow, and it's no wonder so many people are stuck here." Cherry screamed, "Have she gone mad? They need to keep quiet." Liu Yutsu screamed, "Silence, so they can take all the rewards?" She wouldn't let that happen. At that moment, she tried to destroy the statue, but the statue's bright red, glowing eyes immediately focused on her. Rose screamed, "What is she doing?" Liu Yutsu turned to Liu and asked. He didn't expect this. His first death in this game would be on the conscience of a little bug like her, and her boss, the Lord of the World, sends him his regards. It turned out that Bird had planned exactly this, hinting that they still had a way out. The spy they'd planted in the Immortal Clan had also joined the group for this dungeon. Why don't they take advantage of this opportunity and learn the secret through her? After which, they disrupt their raid and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She'd long since grown tired of this impoverished Immortal Clan. For this service, she'd be accepted into the Zongheng clan and even given her own squad to lead. She apologizes to Isho because she has nothing against her personally, but her unbearable personality always gave her a lot of headaches. Isho asked again, "Right? But she's sick of it. Aren't you tired of wearing this hypocritical mask day after day?" Liu Yutsu screamed and realized she was already 1 foot in the grave, but she still decided to steal her equipment. How shameless. She replied that she still didn't understand. Why did she think the leader sent her bandit to accompany her in this dungeon? Liu Yutsu asked again, "What does that mean?" Isho held up her hand and said that the leader had seen through her lie long ago. She only went with her to retrieve their Immortal Clan's equipment. Immortal whispered to Liu that it had just been confirmed that their Immortal Clan didn't like the Zongheng Clan's spy. A traitor was right in front of him right now, and he wanted to somehow exploit this opportunity. Liu Yutsu said that was impossible, since she had pretended so perfectly. Let her stay away from her. But a moment later, Isho destroyed her with her skill, and said that perhaps that was enough, although it still irritated her that it was her fault and she'd have to die here once. But thanks to her rogue class, at least she wouldn't lose her equipment upon death. Liu Yutsu laughed and said that even though they discovered her, at least she dragged Liu along with her. At that moment, Liu suddenly disappeared, and she screamed, "How is this possible? What's going on here?" Isho replied, "Did she really think such a tiny thing could kill an expert?" Rose exclaimed, "What does this mean?" Cherry screamed that they'd been set up. The statues began fighting among themselves, and all the girls found themselves outside after death. The guys were surprised that they'd finally returned, and that was excellent acting. So, was she impressed by the stone statue's stats? Did she shit herself in fear? Liu apologized for losing a level, and Immortal said she'd taken quite a beating. She replied that everything was fine. Liu Yutsu wondered why everyone was so happy to see her. Shenshan remarked that he still thought he was the beloved Immortal Clan member, and that the entire world should revolve around him. The Immortal Cloth said that she must be surprised that the expert hadn't been revived with her. Liu Yutsu exclaimed, "How could he have survived? He entered the dungeon with them. Why didn't he die?" The Immortal Cloth replied that their expert needed only 1 clone to reverse such a situation, something their entire lousy clan couldn't do. Shenshan said there was no point in wasting words on her, that she should get out of here, and the leader said that everyone was pursuing their own goals, so they wouldn't harm themselves. Liu Yutsu replied that all her cunning plans had fallen apart because of a mere clone of Liu. As soon as Immortal alerted his spy, he too planned this operation, though he acted hastily. Fortunately, the plan worked flawlessly. First, he used the Scroll of Mastery he received as a reward to level up Lightning Shadow. Lightning Shadow summons a lightning clone, with 80% of the user's stats and one active skill of his choice. Elemental and lightning stats are increased by 30% and last for 30 seconds. Even before entering the dungeons, he activated all the buffs with skills and potions. He was only worried about the clone revealing itself, but the rules of the Silent Abodes, requiring absolute silence, played into his hands.